Hey everyone, welcome to East Park. Today I want to argue that Eric Cartman is the most well-written character in the history of adult animation. Not the funniest, though he is that too. Not the most evil, though he has a strong case. The most well-written, and I think by the time you fall asleep to this video, you will agree with me. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, that's enough. Let's begin. The making of a monster, Cartman's origins, and the absence of a father. To understand Eric Cartman, you have to understand where he comes from. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Because before the schemes, before the manipulation, before all the horrible things he does throughout the show, there is a kid. A kid who grows up in a house with no father, raised by a mother who loves him more than anything in the world, but has absolutely no idea how to actually parent him. And that combination, that specific mix of too much love and not enough structure, is the foundation that everything else in Cartman's character is built on. So let us start at the very beginning. Eric Theodore Cartman lives in South Park, Colorado with his mother, Leanne Cartman. He has no father, no stepdad, no uncle stepping in, no male figure of any kind in his life. It is just him and his mom, and it has been that way for as long as he can remember. Now, in a lot of shows, this would just be a background detail, a quick mention, and then you move on. But South Park does not treat it that way. The show keeps coming back to this fact over and over again across multiple seasons because the creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, clearly see it as something central to who Cartman is. The very first time we really dig into this is in the season 1 finale, an episode called Cartman's Mom is a Dirty Slut. In this episode, Cartman becomes obsessed with finding out who his father is. He goes to his mother and asks her directly, and she tells him she met his father at something called the 12th annual Drunken Barn Dance. She says his father might be a man named Chief Running Water, so Cartman dresses up and heads to the local reservation to find him. But Chief Running Water tells Cartman he is not his dad. He also tells Cartman that his mom is, well, the title of the episode. From there, Cartman goes to Chef, thinking Chef might be his father, but Chef says no too. Then he confronts Mr. Garrison at the bar, and Garrison admits he slept with Leanne that night, but then asks the question that cuts to the heart of it all. He says, who didn't? Only one person in the entire bar claims they did not sleep with her. That is when it really hits Cartman and the audience. His mother slept with practically everyone in town, and because of that, figuring out who his dad is becomes almost impossible. Now here is what makes this so important for understanding Cartman as a character. This is not just a funny plot for a cartoon episode. This is a kid realizing that his own origin is a mess. He cannot even get a straight answer about something as basic as who his father is. And the show does something really interesting in this episode. While the boys are out filming Cartman having a tea party with his stuffed animals in the backyard, playing pretend and talking to dolls like they are his friends and family, the show is quietly telling us something. This is a lonely kid. He is filling the gaps in his life with imaginary relationships because the real ones are not giving him what he needs. When Dr. Mephisto offers to do a DNA test to figure out who Cartman's father is, it costs $3,000. Cartman does not have that money, and you can see how defeated he is. He just leaves, completely crushed. At the bus stop the next day, Stan and Kyle ask him what is wrong, and he tells them he will never know who his father is because he cannot afford the test. For a brief moment, you see the real Cartman. Not the loud, obnoxious kid who yells at everyone, not the schemer, not the bully, just a sad boy who wants to know where he came from. It is one of those rare moments where the show strips away all the comedy and lets you sit with how genuinely painful Cartman's situation actually is. The mystery stretches into season 2 with Cartman's mom is still a dirty slut, where Dr. Mephisto is shot right before he can reveal the answer. After a whole blizzard and a bunch of chaos, Mephisto finally tells everyone that Cartman's father is actually his mother, Leanne, because she is supposedly a hermaphrodite, meaning she has both male and female body parts. The show basically said Leanne was both his mother and his father. Now, for years, fans accepted this as the answer, but then, 12 whole seasons later, in the season 14 episodes 200 and 201, the show drops a bomb. It turns out that whole hermaphrodite thing was a lie. The entire town of South Park made it up to cover up the real truth. Cartman's actual biological father was a man named Jack Tenerman, a right tackle for the Denver Broncos who had an affair with Leanne. And here is the part that makes this one of the darkest reveals in the entire show. Jack Tenerman is the father of Scott Tenerman. If you know South Park at all, you know what happened in Scott Tenerman Must Die. Cartman had Scott's parents killed and then ground them up into chili and fed it to Scott at a chili cook-off, which means Cartman unknowingly had his own father murdered. murdered. He unknowingly fed his own father to his own half-brother. And when he finds out about this in 201, when Scott reveals the truth to hurt him, Cartman does not cry because he killed his dad. He cries because and that the only way to reach the antidote would be to saw through his own leg. That is how out of control Cartman has gotten. So Leanne tries hiring nannies from television shows like Nanny 911 and Super Nanny, and Cartman destroys every single one of them. He is so cruel to Nanny Stella that she leaves crying. Super Nanny ends up in a mental hospital, sobbing and eating her own feces. He psychologically breaks these professional adults like it is nothing. Then Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer, shows up, and he does something no one else has ever done. He treats Cartman like a dog. He does not yell at him, he does not negotiate with him, he just nips him on the neck with 2 fingers, makes a tst sound, and completely ignores him until Cartman calms down. He takes Cartman on walks with a leash. He teaches Leanne to be the leader of the pack and to stop letting her son control her. And it works. It actually works. Cartman gets so frustrated that he runs away from home, but none of his friends will take him in. Not Stan, not Kyle, not Kenny, not Butters, not Jimmy, not Craig. Nobody wants him. He spends a miserable night alone in a rainy alleyway and comes back home. And then something incredible happens. Cartman starts to change. He eats a healthy breakfast, he does his homework, he is polite. For maybe the only time in the entire series, you see what Cartman could have been if he had been raised differently. The show gives us this brief, beautiful glimpse of a version of Eric Cartman who is just a normal, well-behaved kid. And it is genuinely moving. But then comes the ending, and it is devastating. Caesar Milan finishes his work and tells Leanne that she is just a client, not his friend, and leaves. And Leanne is crushed. Because here is the thing that Tist reveals more than any other episode in the show. Leanne does not spoil Cartman just because she is weak. She spoils him because he is all she has. She has no partner, no real friends, no life outside of Eric. She had started to depend on Caesar's company, and now he is gone. So she turns to her son, the only person left, and asks him to go see a show with her. When he hesitates, she tells him he can have whatever he wants. She offers to buy him new toys, 2 of them, whatever he wants. And just like that, Cartman's eyes change. That little spark of something dark comes back. He asks for 2 Mega Rangers. She says yes, he can have whatever he wants. And the episode ends with Cartman hugging his mother, but the look on his face says it all. The old Cartman is back. The brief window of what he could have been is closed forever. And it closed because his mother, out of loneliness and fear of being alone, chose to go back to being his friend instead of his parent. Trey Parker once said in an interview that he and Matt Stone had met so many parents who were desperately trying to be friends with their kids instead of actually raising them, and that those parents were making really terrible kids. That is the entire theme of Cartman's home life summed up in one sentence. Leanne is not evil, she is lonely. She is a single mother with no support system, no partner, and a kid who figured out very early that if he pushes hard enough, she will give in every single time. And the result of that is Eric Cartman. This is why Cartman's origin matters so much. He is not just randomly evil. He is not bad for no reason. He is the product of a household where love existed, but boundaries did not. Where a mother's fear of losing her only source of companionship turned into a total inability to say no. Where the absence of a father left a hole that Cartman tries to fill with power, attention, and control over everyone around him. Every scheme he runs, every group he tries to lead, every time he screams, "Respect my authority." He is a kid who never had anyone in his life with real authority over him trying to create that feeling for himself. And the fact that he unknowingly killed the one person who could have been that father figure, Jack Tenerman, is not just dark comedy. It is the show telling us that Cartman's fate was sealed before he even knew what was happening. The father he never had was taken from the world by his own actions, and he did not even care when he found out. That is not just evil, that is broken. And what makes it even sadder is that the show has shown us more than once that this is something that actually eats at Cartman beneath all the bravado. In the episode Le Petit Tourette, Cartman accidentally admits that he cries at night because he does not have a dad. It slips out when he loses control of what he is saying, and you can tell it is real because he immediately tries to take it back. He does not want anyone to know that the absence of his father still hurts him, but it does. It always has. And that is where everything that follows in this video essay begins. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Cartman's broken home life only explains part of who he is. To really understand his philosophy, we need to look at what happens when you give a kid with no boundaries $1 million and his own amusement park. Section 2. The philosophy of selfishness. Cartman Land and the paradox of getting everything you want. If section 1 showed us where Cartman came from, this section is about what he believes, because Eric Cartman does have a belief system. It is not written down anywhere, and he has never given it a name, but it is consistent across the entire run of the show. And that belief system can be boiled down to one simple idea: other people are the problem. If Cartman could just get rid of everyone else, if he could live in a world where nobody bothered him and nobody told him what to do, he would finally be happy. That is what he truly believes. And in season 5, episode 6, Cartman Land, the show puts that belief to the ultimate test. It gives Cartman exactly what he wants, and then it watches everything fall apart. The episode starts with the death of Cartman's grandmother, Mabel Cartman. Now, a normal kid would be sad about losing a grandparent, but Cartman treats it like nothing more than a minor inconvenience. He is annoyed that it messes up his weekend plans. At the reading of the will, the rest of the Cartman family expects to split her money for things like paying off debts or, in some cases, buying drugs. But Mabel left all of it, every single dollar of her $1 million life savings, to Eric. The entire room is shocked, but Cartman is thrilled. This is, as he puts it, a lifelong dream coming true. He has always wanted $1 million. And now he has it. So what does Cartman do with $1 million? He does not save it. He does not invest it. He does not share it with anyone. He immediately goes out and buys an amusement park. The park is called North Park Funland, and it is owned by a man named Frank Fun. Frank warns Cartman that the park has been a financial failure. The rides need work. It is basically a money pit. But Cartman does not care about any of that. He is not buying the park to run a business. He is buying it so he never has to stand in line again. And that is the key to understanding Cartman's whole deal in this episode. His hatred of lines at amusement parks is what drives the entire plot. He goes on this long rant about how much he hates waiting behind other people, how the crowds ruin everything. And the way the show presents it, his rant sounds almost exactly like the Grinch complaining about the noise from the Who's down in Whoville. It is this huge, dramatic speech about something that most people would just accept as a normal part of life. But for Cartman, other people existing in the same space as him is a problem that needs to be solved. And his solution is to buy the whole park and kick everyone out. He signs the paperwork, renames the park Cartman Land, and does exactly what he planned. He rides every single ride by himself. No lines, no crowds, no waiting, no sharing. Just Eric Cartman alone in a theme park having the time of his life. And for a while, it actually works. He is genuinely happy. He goes on the roller coasters over and over. He eats whatever he wants from the food stands. He has created a perfect little world where the only person who matters is himself. This is Cartman's version of heaven, a place with no other people. But the show is not just interested in Cartman during this episode. It is equally interested in what Cartman's good fortune does to Kyle. Because when Kyle finds out that Cartman, a kid who has done nothing but terrible things his entire life, just inherited $1 million and bought himself an amusement park, something breaks inside of him. Kyle is Jewish, and he has been raised with a strong faith in God. But this feels deeply unfair to him. How can God allow someone as awful as Cartman to be rewarded like this while good people suffer? How can the universe work this way? The stress of this question literally makes Kyle sick. He develops a hemorrhoid, which is a painful swelling that anyone who has had one will tell you is absolutely miserable. And it only gets worse as Cartman gets happier. When Cartman airs a television commercial for Cartman Land, he does not use it to attract customers. He uses it to brag that nobody is allowed in. The commercial specifically says that no one can come to Cartman Land. And then just to twist the knife a little deeper, the commercial adds that Stan and Kyle especially cannot come. Business experts on television completely misread this. They think Cartman is using some kind of brilliant marketing strategy where you tell people they cannot have something to make them want it more. They call it the "you can't come" technique and praise Cartman as a financial genius. In reality, Cartman is not being clever. He is just being himself. He genuinely does not want anyone there. Kyle and Stan try to sneak into the park by climbing the fence, but Kyle pops his hemorrhoid on the barbed wire and it gets infected. He ends up in the hospital and his condition keeps getting worse. His parents try to cheer him up by telling him the biblical story of Job, a man who God allowed to suffer terribly as part of a bet with Satan. But they leave out the ending where Job eventually gets everything back and lives a happy life. So Kyle is left thinking that God just lets good people suffer for no reason at all. His faith is completely destroyed. He loses the will to live. At one point, he actually flatlines in the hospital. Kyle is literally dying because Cartman is happy. Now here's where the show's real argument kicks in. Because Cartman's paradise does not last. And the reason it does not last is so simple and so obvious that only someone as self-centered as Cartman could have missed it. You cannot run an amusement park by yourself. After Stan and Kyle tried to break in, Cartman realizes he needs security. So he hires a guard. But the guard wants to be paid in actual money, not free rides. Cartman has already spent his entire $1 million buying the park. He has no cash left. The guard tells him that if he lets just 2 paying customers into the park each day, he can afford the salary. Cartman hates the idea, but he agrees. 2 people. He can barely notice 2 people. But then one of the rides breaks down. Now he needs a maintenance worker. That costs more money, which means more customers. Then he needs someone to run the food and drink stands. More money, more customers. Then more security because there are more people. And on it goes, this slow, unstoppable chain of one thing leading to another. Every problem requires money to fix, and every dollar requires more people walking through the gates. Within a short time, Cartman Land goes from Cartman's private paradise to a fully packed amusement park with hundreds of people in it. The lines are back, the crowds are back. Everything Cartman hated about theme parks has returned, and it is happening in his own park with his own name on it. And here is the part that really kills him. The park is a massive success. Business experts on the news are praising him. Other businesses across the country are copying his "you can't come" technique, limiting their own customers to drive up demand. On paper, Cartman is a genius who turned a failing theme park into a gold mine. But Cartman does not care about success or money at this point. He just wanted to ride the rides alone, and now he cannot even do that. The thing he spent $1 million to get has been completely ruined by the reality that you cannot exist in a world without other people. So Cartman does what Cartman always does when things do not go his way. He quits. He goes to Frank Fun and demands to sell the park back for his original $1 million. Frank points out that the park is a huge success now and it would make no sense to sell it back. But Cartman does not care. He wants out. Frank agrees and gives him the money. And then everything collapses. The second Cartman walks out of the park with his cash, the IRS shows up. They take $500,000 because Cartman never paid any taxes on the income the park generated. He did not keep any records. He did not file anything. He is a 9-year-old kid who bought a theme park and never once thought about what the government might want. Then the rest of his money is taken because Kenny McCormick's parents, Stuart and Carol McCormick, filed a lawsuit against him. Kenny died on one of the rides, impaled by a pipe on the mineshaft roller coaster. When the agents tell Cartman that a little boy died in his park, Cartman responds with one of the most memorable lines in the episode. He says, "Who, Kenny?" He dies all the time. But the lawsuit takes the remaining money, plus Cartman still owes an additional $13,000 in debt that he cannot pay. In the span of about 30 seconds, Cartman goes from having $1 million to having less than nothing. He is in debt. He has no park. He has no money. And when he begs Frank to sell the park back so he can try to earn enough to pay off what he owes, Frank says no. The park is too successful now. Why would he sell it back to a broke kid? The final scene of the episode is one of the most satisfying moments in the entire series. Stan brings Kyle, who is still in the hospital and barely alive, down to the park to see Cartman's misery. Cartman is standing outside the gates of his own former park, screaming, crying, and throwing rocks at it. He yells that it is not fair, that they built him up just to tear him down. And then the security guard he hired, the very first employee he brought on, sprays him in the face with pepper spray. A crowd gathers to watch Cartman suffer, and Kyle, from his wheelchair, watches all of this happen. And something incredible occurs. His hemorrhoid goes away almost immediately. His will to live comes back. His faith in God is restored. Kyle recovers because he sees that the universe does in fact punish people like Cartman. There is justice. It just takes a little while sometimes. So what does Cartman Land actually tell us about Cartman's belief system? It tells us that his core idea, that happiness means getting rid of other people, is fundamentally wrong. Not just morally wrong, but practically wrong. It does not work. You cannot build a paradise for one person because the world does not function that way. Every system, whether it is a theme park or a friendship or a society, requires other people to keep it running. Cartman's $1 million could have made him comfortable for a long time if he had just done something normal with it. But his selfishness, his absolute refusal to share anything with anyone, turned a golden opportunity into a disaster. The episode is also saying something about how Cartman sees the world versus how the world actually is. In Cartman's mind, he is the only person who matters. Everyone else is just an obstacle or a tool. But reality keeps reminding him that he needs other people whether he likes it or not. He needed a security guard. He needed a maintenance worker. He needed customers. And the second he tried to be completely self-sufficient, he was crushed by forces he did not even know existed, like taxes and lawsuits and basic economics. There is also something deeply funny and deeply sad about the fact that Cartman was accidentally brilliant. He stumbled into a marketing strategy that actual business people admired. If he had just swallowed his pride and accepted that other people would be in his park, he would have been rich, but he could not do it. His selfishness was so complete, so built into who he is, that he would rather lose everything than share a roller coaster with another kid. And that is the philosophy of Eric Cartman in a nutshell. It is not about money. It is not even about winning. It is about control. It is about being the only one who gets to enjoy things. And the show keeps proving episode after episode that this philosophy leads nowhere good. Cartman Land is the clearest example, but the pattern repeats throughout the entire series. Every time Cartman builds something for himself, every time he tries to create his own little kingdom, reality tears it down. Because you cannot cut yourself off from the rest of the world and expect the world to keep working in your favor. Kyle's side of the story matters here too. He is a good person who does the right thing and still suffers. Cartman is a terrible person who does horrible things and still gets rewarded, at least temporarily. The episode is basically asking one of the oldest questions in human history. Why do bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people? And the answer it gives, through Kyle's recovery at the end, is that the rewards for being selfish are always temporary. The bill always comes due. That $13,000 debt is not just a funny number to end the episode on. It is the show telling us that selfishness does not just fail to make you happy, it actually puts you in the negative. You end up worse than if you had never tried at all. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But even after all of this, even after losing everything, Cartman does not learn. He never learns. And that is what makes him such a fascinating character. Because most people, after going through what Cartman goes through in Cartman Land, would take a step back and think about doing things differently. But not Cartman, he just moves on to the next scheme. And to understand why he never changes, we have to look at his most important relationship in the entire show, his endless war with Kyle Broflovsky. Section 3, the Cartman-Kyle rivalry. Chaos versus order. Every great villain needs someone standing on the other side, someone who looks at everything the villain does and says, no, that is wrong and I am going to fight you on it. For Eric Cartman, that person has always been Kyle Broflovsky. From the very first season of South Park all the way through to the Paramount Plus specials, the Cartman and Kyle relationship is the backbone of the entire show. It is the thing that holds the whole story together. And when you really look at it, you realize that the two of them are not just enemies. They are opposite versions of the same thing. Two kids who feel things deeply, who have strong opinions about how the world should work, and who will go to extreme lengths to prove that they are right. The only difference is what they believe. Kyle is the kid who plays by the rules. He has a strong sense of right and wrong. He comes from a stable home with two parents, Gerald and Sheila Broflovsky, who are involved in his life, sometimes too involved in the case of his mother. He is Jewish, and his faith gives him a way of understanding the world that Cartman does not have and does not want. When something unfair happens, Kyle speaks up. When someone is being hurt, Kyle tries to help. He is not perfect by any means, and the show makes sure to give him flaws and moments of weakness throughout the series. But at his core, Kyle believes that doing the right thing matters. He believes in fairness. He believes that actions should have consequences. Cartman believes none of that. Cartman believes that the world belongs to whoever is smart enough or mean enough to take control of it. He does not care about fairness. He does not care about other people's feelings. He cares about winning. And the person he most wants to beat, the person whose suffering gives him the most satisfaction, is Kyle. Not Stan, not Kenny, not Butters, Kyle. Because Kyle is the one who pushes back. Kyle is the one who calls Cartman out. Kyle is the one who makes Cartman feel like maybe he is wrong, and Cartman cannot stand that. The show establishes this rivalry early, but it really starts to heat up around season 5. Before that, Cartman and Kyle had more of a back and forth, where they would insult each other and argue, but it stayed at the level of kids being mean to each other. Starting around season 5, and especially after Scott Tenerman must die, their relationship takes a much darker turn. Because once the show proved that Cartman was capable of getting people killed and feeding their bodies to their own son, the stakes of every fight between Cartman and Kyle suddenly became much higher. Kyle was no longer just arguing with an annoying fat kid. He was standing up against someone who had proven he was genuinely dangerous. One of the clearest examples of how far Cartman is willing to go against Kyle happens in the season 12 premiere, Tonsil Trouble. In this episode, Cartman has to get his tonsils removed. During the surgery, the doctors at Hell's Pass Hospital mess up the blood transfusion and accidentally infect Cartman with HIV. When the kids at school find out, Kyle starts laughing, and he cannot stop. He thinks it is hilarious that Cartman, of all people, the kid who has spent years making fun of everyone else's suffering, is now the one who is sick. Kyle knows it is wrong to laugh. Stan even tells him that he should feel bad, but Kyle just cannot help himself. After everything Cartman has done to him over the years, watching Cartman be on the receiving end of something terrible feels like the universe finally getting it right. But Cartman does not see it that way. Cartman is furious. He tries to get people to feel sorry for him. He holds a benefit concert to raise awareness for his condition, but barely anyone shows up. Only Butters and Jimmy come. Nobody cares about HIV anymore because everyone has moved on to caring about cancer instead. Elton John was supposed to perform but went to a cancer benefit instead, so Jimmy Buffett fills in. The whole thing is a disaster. It is humiliating for Cartman. He wants sympathy, he wants attention, he wants the world to stop and acknowledge his suffering, and nobody will, except Kyle. But Kyle is not giving him sympathy. Kyle is giving him laughter. And through all of it, Kyle just cannot stop. That laughter is what pushes Cartman over the edge. Because if there is one thing Cartman absolutely cannot handle, it is being laughed at. Being feared, being hated, being avoided, he can live with all of that. But being laughed at, that is the one thing that makes him lose control. So Cartman does something so cruel, so extreme, that even by his standards, it is shocking. He sneaks into Kyle's house at night with help from Butters. He draws his own blood, which is now infected with HIV, into a syringe. And while Kyle is sleeping, he puts it into Kyle's mouth. He deliberately infects Kyle with HIV. He gives his worst enemy a deadly disease because Kyle laughed at him. When Kyle finds out from the doctor that he is now HIV positive, he knows immediately who did it. He runs to school, finds Cartman, and starts beating him up on the playground until Mr. Mackey pulls them apart. Principal Victoria makes Cartman apologize for giving Kyle HIV, and then, in one of the most absurd moments in the episode, makes Kyle apologize for tattling, as if telling someone that another kid gave you a deadly disease is tattling. What happens next is what makes this episode so interesting from a Cartman and Kyle standpoint. Kyle is so angry that he goes straight to Cartman's house and starts breaking everything Cartman owns. He smashes his stuff, tears things apart, and is about to destroy Cartman's Xbox 360 when Cartman begs him to stop. And here's the thing, Cartman does not beg by saying sorry. He does not beg by admitting he was wrong. He begs by offering Kyle something. He tells Kyle that he has been doing research and he thinks that Magic Johnson, who has been living with HIV for years, might hold the key to a cure. He basically says, if you stop breaking my stuff, I will help you find a way to save both of us. And Kyle agrees. Not because he forgives Cartman, not because he likes Cartman, but because he wants to live. So the two of them, the kid who gave the other kid HIV and the kid who now has it, fly to Los Angeles together to visit Magic Johnson. They pretend to have cancer to get free plane tickets because nobody cares about HIV anymore. They find Johnson, who is friendly and wants to help but does not know what it is about his house that has kept him healthy. Eventually, they discover that Johnson keeps all of his money in cash in his bedroom because he does not trust banks. Scientists test a large dose of cash, and it turns out that injecting about $180,000 into the bloodstream actually destroys the virus. Both boys are cured. At the end of the episode, an event is held in their honor. The host calls them two brave friends. Kyle immediately says they are not friends. And when the host mistakenly calls them two brave lovers, Kyle goes straight to Cartman's house and breaks his Xbox anyway, with Cartman chasing after him screaming. This is the Cartman and Kyle relationship in its purest form. Even when they are forced to work together, even when their lives literally depend on cooperating, they still hate each other. The HIV episode is important because it shows both sides of the coin. It shows that Cartman will do something as extreme as giving someone a fatal disease over something as small as being laughed at. And it shows that Kyle, even though he is supposed to be the moral one, has a side of him that takes pleasure in watching Cartman suffer. They bring out the worst in each other. The Cartoon Wars two-parter from season 10 is another perfect example of how their rivalry works on a bigger level. In those episodes, the television show Family Guy is about to air an episode that includes a drawing of the Prophet Muhammad. Cartman hates Family Guy Guy and wants the show canceled, but he does not care about the religious issue at all. He is just using the controversy as an excuse to get a show he does not like taken off the air. He pretends to care about sensitivity and respect when in reality he is the least sensitive and respectful person alive. Kyle, on the other hand, believes that either everything should be allowed to be made fun of or nothing should be. He does not even like Family Guy, but he goes all the way to the network to fight for the show to stay on the air because he believes in the principle behind it. So you have Cartman and Kyle going head to head, not over a personal grudge, but over an actual idea about how the world should work. Should there be limits on what comedy can say? Cartman says yes, but only because it helps him personally. Kyle says no, because he genuinely believes in something bigger than himself. That is the real difference between them. Cartman will use any idea, any cause, any movement as a weapon if it gets him what he wants. Kyle will fight for an idea even when it costs him something. Their dynamic also plays a huge role in Imagination Land, the 3-part special from season 11. In those episodes, Cartman makes a bet with Kyle that if leprechauns are real, Kyle has to put Cartman's balls in his mouth. Through a wild series of events involving terrorists attacking the world of imagination, Cartman ends up being technically right. And instead of caring about the global crisis happening around them, Cartman spends the entire trilogy trying to get a court order to force Kyle to follow through on the bet. He goes to a lawyer, he goes to a judge, he takes it all the way to the Supreme Court. The fate of the world is at stake, and all Cartman cares about is humiliating Kyle. That tells you everything about his priorities. Winning against Kyle is more important to him than literally anything else. And then there is Breast Cancer Show Ever from season 12. In this episode, Wendy Testaberger decides she has had enough of Cartman making fun of breast cancer and challenges him to a fight after school. Cartman, who talks tough all the time, is suddenly terrified because Wendy is serious. He spends the entire episode trying to get out of the fight. He tries to get the principal to cancel it. He tries to bribe Wendy. He even tries to get himself suspended so he does not have to show up. When the fight actually happens, Wendy beats him badly. She punches him over and over and he cannot do anything about it. And Kyle watches the whole thing with a look of pure satisfaction on his face. For Kyle, watching Cartman get beaten up by a girl after all the things Cartman has done is one of the greatest moments of his life. It is the same feeling he had at the end of Cartman Land. Someone is finally giving Cartman what he deserves. But the reason the rivalry matters so much to the show is not just the fights and the schemes. It is that they need each other. The show has made this clear multiple times. When Kyle temporarily breaks his friendship with Stan, his first choice for a replacement best friend is usually Cartman. When Cartman is in trouble or needs someone smart to help him, he almost always turns to Kyle. In The Death of Eric Cartman, when all the boys decide to ignore Cartman because they are sick of him being awful, Cartman becomes convinced he is dead because nobody will talk to him. Only Butters, who missed the memo, still acknowledges him, which leads Cartman to believe Butters can see ghosts. But the thing that hurts him the most during that whole experience is not being ignored by Stan or Kenny. It is that Kyle will not look at him. During the episode when Cartman and Butters are going around apologizing to everyone Cartman has ever wronged, there is a moment where Cartman sees Kyle and seems genuinely moved, like he actually wants Kyle's forgiveness more than anyone else's. Kyle's opinion, Kyle's attention, Kyle's reaction, these are the things that matter most to Cartman, even if he would never admit it out loud. Kyle would probably say he hates Cartman and wants nothing to do with him. Cartman would probably say Kyle is his least favorite person on the planet. But the truth is that they define each other. Without Cartman, Kyle would have nobody to push back against. Without Kyle, Cartman would have nobody worth pushing. They are locked in this endless cycle where Cartman does something horrible, Kyle tries to stop him, sometimes Kyle wins, and sometimes Cartman wins, and then it starts all over again. Neither of them can walk away because neither of them knows who they are without the other one there. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And what makes this even more interesting is that there is one thing Cartman does to Kyle that goes beyond any scheme or prank or even a deadly virus. It is something so dark and so personal that it redefines their entire rivalry and shakes the very foundations of the show. And that thing happens in Scott Tenerman Must Die, the episode where Cartman crosses a line so far that even Stan and Kyle agree they should never make him angry again. Section 4. Scott Tenerman Must Die. The Birth of True Evil. There are episodes of television that change things, not just for the show they belong to, but for the characters inside them. Episodes where a line gets crossed and there is no going back. For South Park, that episode is Scott Tenerman Must Die. It aired on July 11th, 2001, as the 4th episode of season 5. And when it was over, Eric Cartman was no longer just the fat kid who said mean things. He was something else entirely. He was someone who could plan, who could wait, who could use the people around him like pieces on a board and move them exactly where he needed them to go. And the thing he did at the end of that episode was so far beyond anything the show had done before that even the creators were not sure they should go through with it. They did, and it changed everything. The episode starts simply. Cartman shows up at the bus stop and brags to Stan, Kyle, and Kenny that he has reached puberty before any of them. He has proof. He has his first pubic hair. The other boys are confused, and then Kyle figures out the truth. Cartman did not grow the hair himself. He bought it from a 9th grader named Scott Tenerman for $10. Kyle tells Cartman that pubic hair does not work that way. You do not buy it, you grow it yourself. Cartman has been tricked. He has been made a fool of by an older kid who saw an easy target and took his money. Now, for most people, this would be embarrassing. You got scammed out of 10 bucks. You feel stupid, you learn your lesson, and you move on. But Cartman is not most people. Cartman goes back to Scott's house to demand his money back. And Scott, who is smarter and older and enjoys messing with Cartman, does not just refuse. He keeps the game going. Through a series of tricks, Scott takes even more money from Cartman. He scams him out of an additional $6.12, brings the total to $16.12, and even sends Cartman all the way to Fort Collins on a fake trip to a pube fair that does not exist. Every time Cartman tries to outsmart Scott, Scott is one step ahead. Cartman is losing and he knows it, and everybody knows it. Kyle tells Cartman to just give up. Scott is smarter than him. Let it go. But Cartman does not let things go. That is the whole point. The final straw comes when Scott tells Cartman he will give him his money back if Cartman gets on his knees, begs for it, and sings a song about being a little piggy. Cartman is desperate enough that he does it. He gets down and sings, and then, instead of giving the money back, Scott lights all $16.12 on fire right in front of him. He burns the money while Cartman screams. It was never about the money for Scott. It was about the power. It was about watching a younger kid squirm. And for Cartman, that moment is the turning point. Something inside him snaps. Not the annoying, whiny Cartman who throws tantrums, something deeper and colder. From this point forward, his plans are no longer about getting even. They are about total destruction. Cartman's first idea for revenge is to train a pony owned by a local farmer named Bill Dinkins to bite off Scott's private parts. He gets the idea from the movie Hannibal, where someone trains giant pigs to eat people. He sets up a scarecrow and tries to get the pony to attack it. It does not go well. While working on this plan, his uncle Jimbo and Jimbo's friend Ned show up and tell Cartman that the best way to hurt someone is to find out what they care about and use it against them. So Cartman spies on Scott's house and discovers that Scott's favorite band in the world is Radiohead. Now Cartman has something to work with. His next attempt involves making a fake video where he dubs his own voice over an MTV interview with Radiohead, making it sound like the band members all hate Scott Tenerman. He plays this video for the whole town, but Scott fights back. Scott has been recording Cartman the whole time, and he plays a video of Cartman doing his little piggy dance for everyone to see. The entire town laughs at Cartman. Even Kenny dies from laughing so hard. Cartman has been humiliated again, worse than before, and this time it happened in front of everybody. This is the moment where Cartman stops thinking small. Up until now, everything he has done has been reactive. Someone tricked him, so he tried to trick them back. Someone embarrassed him, so he tried to embarrass them back. But after this public humiliation, after the whole town has laughed at him and even his best friend has died from laughing at how pathetic he is, Cartman shifts into a completely different gear. He sits down and begins working on something bigger. Something that involves multiple moving pieces and multiple people, most of whom have no idea they are being used. He writes a letter to Radiohead, pretending to be from Scott's friend, telling them that Scott is a kid who is dying of cancer in his rear end, and his final wish is to meet the band. He asks them if they are free next Tuesday around 5. He then tells Stan and Kyle about a plan to humiliate Scott at a chili cook-off. He says he's going to have the pony bite off Scott's private parts while Radiohead watches, and Radiohead will think Scott is not cool. Stan and Kyle think the plan is stupid, and Cartman is counting on that. Here is where it gets brilliant and terrible terrible at the same time. Cartman knows that Stan and Kyle do not like him enough to keep his secrets. He knows they will go to Scott and warn him about the pony plan, and that is exactly what he wants. Because the pony plan is not the real plan. The pony plan is the distraction. It is what Cartman wants Scott to think the plan is so that Scott will focus all of his energy on stopping it while the real plan happens around him without anyone noticing. And that is exactly what happens. Stan and Kyle go straight to Scott and tell him everything. Scott now thinks he knows what Cartman is up to, so Scott makes his own move. He tells his parents that there is an abandoned, starving pony at Farmer Denkin's ranch and that they should go save it. His parents, who think their son is a good kid, go to the ranch that night to rescue the pony and take it to a shelter. Meanwhile, Scott collects pubic hair from teenagers around town and makes his own batch of chili, planning to feed it to Cartman at the cook-off and humiliate him one more time in front of everyone. The day of the chili cook-off arrived. Scott is confident. He thinks he has won. He feeds Cartman a bowl of chili and watches him eat it with a grin on his face. When Cartman finishes, Scott gets ready to reveal the secret ingredient. But before he can say a word, Cartman interrupts him. And what follows is one of the most disturbing scenes in the history of animated television. Cartman tells Scott that he already knew about the pubic hair in the chili. He switched Scott's bowl with a bowl of chili that Chef had brought. The chili Cartman ate was clean, but the chili that Scott has been eating, that is a different story. Cartman then explains the real plan, step by step, while the entire town listens. He says that he planned for Stan and Kyle to betray him. He wanted them to tell Scott about the pony because he knew Scott would try to do something about it. He also knew that Scott would not go to the ranch himself because he would be afraid of the pony, so Scott would send his parents instead. But what Stan and Kyle did not tell Scott, because they did not know, is that Farmer Denkins is the kind of man who shoots anyone who steps foot on his property without permission. Cartman had gone to Denkins ahead of time and warned him that dangerous pony killers were in the area. So when Scott's parents showed up at the ranch that night to save the pony, Denkins saw them trespassing on his land and shot them both dead. Cartman then tells Scott that he arrived at the scene just in time to see Denkins giving his report to Officer Barbrady. And while the police were busy with the farmer, Cartman stole the bodies. He took them home. He spent the night with a hacksaw. And the chili that Scott Tenerman has been eating at the cook-off, the chili that he thought was just regular chili from the contest, is made from the bodies of his own dead parents. Cartman calls it Mr. and Mrs. Tenerman chili. Scott looks at the bowl. He reaches into it. He pulls out a finger with a ring still on it, his mother's wedding ring. He throws it away, gags, and vomits. Then he starts to cry. He buries his face in the table and sobs because his parents are dead and he just ate them. Cartman jumps up on the table and starts singing. He sings a mocking little song about how he made Scott eat his parents. He is dancing. He is celebrating. And then, right on schedule, Radiohead arrives. The band members walk up, completely unaware of what has just happened. They see a teenage kid crying at a table surrounded by horrified townspeople. And because Cartman's letter told them that Scott was a loser and a crybaby, that is exactly what they think he is. They call him a crybaby. They say he is not cool. They tell him that everyone has problems and he should stop being a baby about it. One of them says he is the most uncool kid they have ever met. Then they leave. Scott's favorite band, the people whose music meant the most to him, have just told him he is pathetic while he sits there having just eaten his own parents. And Cartman, standing over his broken, sobbing enemy, leans down and licks the tears off Scott's face. He calls them the tears of unfathomable sadness and says they are yummy and sweet. Stan and Kyle stand in the crowd, horrified. Kyle says that from now on, it might be best if they never make Cartman angry again. Stan agrees. The creators of South Park, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, have talked about this episode as a turning point for the entire show. They debated for a long time about whether they should actually go through with having Cartman get someone's parents killed and fed to them. It was one thing for Cartman to be mean. It was another thing for him to do something this calculated and this evil. But they decided to go ahead with it, with one important detail. Cartman did not pull the trigger himself. He set up the situation so that someone else did the killing. He used Denkins like he used everyone else, as a tool. Parker has said that this was the episode that turned Cartman from a spoiled brat into the most evil kid in the world. What makes this episode so important for understanding Cartman's character is that it shows all of his abilities at their absolute peak. His patience, his ability to predict what other people will do, his understanding that even his own friends will betray him, and his willingness to use that betrayal as part of the plan. Most villains on television act out of anger or impulse. Cartman acts out of anger too, but he channels it. He takes his rage and he builds something with it. He constructs a machine made of other people's choices, and when he turns it on, it destroys his enemy completely. And the truly horrible twist that makes this story even darker came years later. In the season 14 episodes 200 and 201, it is revealed that Scott Tenerman's father, Jack Tenerman, was actually Cartman's biological father. Jack Tenerman had been a player for the Denver Broncos who had an affair with Leanne Cartman at a drunken barn dance. The whole town had covered up the truth for years to protect the Broncos during a good season. This means that Scott Tenerman is Cartman's half-brother, and the man that Cartman arranged to have killed and chopped up and cooked into chili was his own father. He fed his own father to his own half-brother. And when Cartman finds this out, he does cry. But not because he killed his dad. He cries because Jack Tenerman had red hair, which means Cartman is half ginger. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That is who Eric Cartman is. That is what he is capable of. And the scary part is that this level of planning, this ability to predict people and move them around and use them against each other, does not go away after this episode. It becomes one of his most powerful tools. Cartman is a master at getting what he wants, not through strength, but through manipulation. He reads people. He finds their weak spots. He says the right things. He plays the victim when he needs to, and the hero when it serves him. And the next question worth asking about Eric Cartman is how exactly he does it. What are the specific tricks and tactics he uses to control the people around him? Because the truth is, getting two adults killed through an elaborate chili scheme is impressive in a horrifying way. But it is what Cartman does every single day, in small ways, to the people closest to him that might be even more disturbing. Section 5. The Art of Manipulation. Cartman's Control Tactics. What makes Eric Cartman truly dangerous is not that he is violent. Violence is simple. Anyone can punch someone or throw a rock. What makes Cartman dangerous is that he understands people. He understands what they want, what they are afraid of, what they believe, and how to use all of those things against them. Cartman is, at his core, a manipulator. That is his real weapon. Not his fists, not his size, not even his cruelty. It is his ability to read a room and then twist everything in it to serve his own purpose. And across 20+ seasons of South Park, the show has given us an incredibly detailed picture of exactly how he does it. The first and most important thing to understand about Cartman's manipulation is that it only works because he is willing to believe his own lies. Most people who lie know they are lying. They feel some amount of guilt about it, or at the very least, they keep track of the difference between what is true and what they are saying. Cartman does not do this. When Cartman decides that something is true, it becomes true to him. He rewrites reality inside his own head so completely that when he tells a lie, he is not faking it. He genuinely believes what he is saying, and because he believes it, other people believe it too. This is what makes him so convincing. You cannot catch someone in a lie if they do not think they are lying. We see this pattern over and over in the show. In Fish Sticks from season 13, Jimmy Valmer writes a joke that becomes the funniest joke in the world. The joke is about fish sticks and it goes everywhere. Every comedian is telling it. The whole country is laughing. Even Kanye West gets angry about it because the punchline involves the word gay fish, and he thinks people are calling him that. And Cartman, who was in the room when Jimmy wrote it but contributed absolutely nothing useful, slowly rewrites the memory in his own head until he genuinely believes he came up with the joke himself. The episode actually shows Cartman's memory changing in real time. Each time he tells the story, his version gives himself a bigger and bigger role. First he helped a little, then he helped a lot. Then he was the one doing all the creative work. By the end of the episode, in his own mind, he is the creative genius behind the greatest joke ever told. And Jimmy was just the guy who happened to be sitting nearby holding a pencil. He even gets angry at Jimmy for trying to take credit for something Cartman is now absolutely certain he created himself. Cartman is not pretending. He is not winking at the camera. In his mind, he wrote that joke. And because his belief is so total and so passionate, some people around him actually start to wonder if maybe he is telling the truth. This ability to rewrite the past inside his own head is central to how Cartman controls other people. Because if you can change what you believe happened, you can make anyone doubt their own memory. You can make people feel crazy for disagreeing with you. Cartman does this constantly, especially to Butters, who we will talk about in much more detail in the next section. But for now, what matters is that Cartman's manipulation always starts from the same place. He decides what reality should be, and then he forces everyone around him to live in that version. The second tool in Cartman's manipulation is his ability to use big ideas as weapons. Cartman does not care about ideas. He does not care about religion or politics or social justice or any cause. But he knows that other people care about these things, and he knows that if he wraps his selfish goals inside a bigger idea, people will follow him without questioning what he is really after. The clearest example of this is The Passion of the Jew from season 8. In this episode, Cartman has seen Mel Gibson's movie The Passion of the Christ over 30 times. He is completely obsessed with it. Kyle asks why he is so interested in a movie about Jesus, and the answer has nothing to do with religion. Cartman does not love the movie because he cares about Jesus or Christianity or spirituality or any of that. He loves it because in his mind, the movie proves that Jewish people are bad. It confirms his hatred of Kyle and everything Kyle represents. He even dares Kyle to go see the movie and tell him he is wrong. Kyle does see it, and he is so disturbed by the violent images of Jesus being tortured that he has nightmares and tells Cartman he was right. That moment of validation sends Cartman into overdrive. So Cartman decides to use the movie to build a movement. He creates a fan club for The Passion of the Christ and fills it with regular, well-meaning Christian people from South Park who were genuinely moved by the film. These are not bad people, they are not hateful, they just liked a movie about their religion. But Cartman puts himself at the center of this group, and slowly he starts steering it in a darker direction. He dresses up in a uniform that looks like what Hitler wore. He starts leading the group in chants. The chants are in German. The people in the group do not speak German, so they think they are speaking Aramaic, the language used in the movie. They have no idea that the phrases Cartman is teaching them translate to things like, "It is time for revenge," and "We must exterminate the Jews." He leads them marching through the streets of South Park, goose-stepping like soldiers from World War II, and these innocent, well-meaning people follow right along because they think they are just showing support for a movie they liked. Cartman has turned a fan club into something that looks exactly like a rally from 1930s Germany, and nobody in the group even realizes what is happening. That is manipulation at its most frightening. Cartman did not have to convince these people to be hateful. He just had to find people who already believed in something and then redirect that belief toward his own goal. He hijacked their faith and used it as a delivery system for his hatred. And the scariest part is that if Mel Gibson had not shown up at the end of the episode and revealed himself to be completely insane, Cartman's plan might have kept working. The third tool is fear. When Cartman cannot talk his way into getting what he wants, and when charm and deception are not enough, he will scare people into giving it to him. He will create a crisis out of thin air and then offer himself as the solution. We see this most clearly in Ginger Kids from season 9. In this episode, Cartman gives a school presentation about how kids with red hair, freckles, and pale skin suffer from a made-up disease he calls gingivitis. He describes them as being disgusting, unable to survive in sunlight, and having no souls. It is pure hatred dressed up as a class report, and it works. After his speech, the other kids in school start treating Ginger Kids badly. They make them eat lunch in the hallway. They avoid them. Cartman single-handedly created a wave of discrimination just by giving one speech. Kyle, who has red hair himself, is furious. He gives his own presentation about the real science behind red hair, but it does not stick because Cartman has already set the tone. So Kyle, Stan, and Kenny decide to teach Cartman a lesson. They sneak into his room at night, dye his hair red, bleach his skin pale, and put fake freckles on his face with henna tattoos. When Cartman wakes up and looks in the mirror, he believes he has become a ginger. His own doctor tells him there is no cure, and even suggests to his mother that she have him put down, like a sick animal. Now, here is where a normal person would learn a lesson. Cartman created the hatred that is now being directed at him. He should understand what it feels like and change his behavior, but that is not what happens, not even close. Instead of learning anything, Cartman immediately switches sides. He found something called the Ginger Separatist movement and starts giving speeches about how ginger kids are actually the master race. He tells them the only way to fight hate is with more hate. He takes these kids who have been bullied and marginalized, kids who are hurting and angry, and he channels their pain into a violent movement that he controls. Within days, his ginger army has kidnapped every non-ginger kid in South Park, including Kyle and Stan, and brought them to a conference room at the airport Hilton, where they are going to throw them all into a pit of lava. Kyle is chosen to die first because Cartman calls him a daywalker, someone with red hair but no freckles or pale skin. But before they throw him in, Kyle gets close enough to whisper something to Cartman. He tells him the truth. Cartman is not really a ginger. It was all a prank. Kyle, Stan, and Kenny changed his appearance while he was sleeping. Cartman is stunned. And in that moment, he realizes that if his followers find out he is not actually ginger, they will kill him along with everyone else. So what does he do? He instantly pretends to have a change of heart. He tells the crowd that he has had a sudden realization and that everyone should live together in peace. He leads the group in a song. The ginger kids let everyone go, and Kyle, standing next to him, calls him a manipulative jerk. Cartman agrees, but points out that at least he is not going to die. This episode shows all of Cartman's manipulation tools working at once. He creates a problem through fear and bigotry. When the situation turns against him, he immediately takes control of the people who are most angry and hurt by the problem he created. He rides their anger to a position of total power. And when that power is about to collapse, he flips again, using charm and emotion to defuse the crisis while keeping himself safe. At no point does he actually believe in anything. He does not believe gingers are evil when he says they are, and he does not believe gingers are the master race when he says that either. He believes in one thing only. Eric Cartman should be in charge, and Eric Cartman should never face consequences. This is the pattern that shows up in nearly every major Cartman episode. He finds a group of people who care about something, he positions himself as their leader or their champion. He uses their passion and their energy to advance his own goals. And when things fall apart, he pivots instantly because he was never attached to the cause in the first place. He was only ever attached to the power. Think about how he does this across the show. In the Coon, he creates a superhero identity because he wants to be famous and respected, and when another hero gets more attention, he loses his mind trying to destroy them. In Cartman Finds Love from season 16, he manipulates an entire school's romantic life because he decides that Tolkien Black and the new girl Nicole should date each other. He lies to Nicole, telling her that Kyle is in a relationship with him so she will not date Kyle. He even writes a song and performs it at a basketball game to sell the idea that Kyle and Cartman are a couple. Everyone believes it. Kyle is horrified. And Cartman does all of this not because he cares about who dates who, but because he wants to control the outcome. He wants the story to go his way. And in Cartman's Silly Hate Crime from season 4, when Cartman throws a rock at Tolkien during a sledding competition and gets sent to juvenile hall for a hate crime, the boys actually need him back because they cannot win the sledding race without him. They argue for his release. The system works in Cartman's favor not because he is innocent, but because people need him for their own reasons. Even when Cartman is being punished, he somehow ends up being necessary. The reason all of this matters for understanding Cartman is that it reveals the truth about what kind of villain he really is. He is not the kind who relies on strength or weapons or money. He is the kind who relies on knowing exactly which buttons to push on every single person around him. He studies people the way a scientist studies a lab experiment. He watches what makes them happy, what makes them angry, what they are afraid to lose, and what they will do anything to protect. He files all of that information away in his head, and then, when the time is right, he acts. And because most of the people around him are basically decent people who want to see the good in others and who give people the benefit of the doubt, they keep falling for it. They keep thinking this time will be different. This time, Cartman is being honest. This time, he actually means what he says. And every single time, without fail, they are wrong. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But there is one person in South Park who falls for Cartman's manipulation more than anyone else. One person who trusts Cartman again and again, no matter how many times he gets burned. One person whose kindness and innocence make him the perfect target for everything Cartman does. And that person is Butters Stotch, the boy who somehow keeps believing that Eric Cartman is his friend. Section 6. Cartman and Butters, the predator and the prey. If you want to understand how Eric Cartman treats the people closest to him, you do not need to look at Kyle or Stan or Kenny. You need to look at Butters Stotch. Because Butters is the person who shows us what happens when someone with no defenses meets someone with no conscience. Kyle fights back, Stan walks away, Kenny stays quiet, but Butters trusts. Butters forgives. Butters keeps coming back no matter how many times he gets hurt, and that is exactly what makes him the perfect target for everything Cartman does. Butters is one of the kindest characters in the entire show. He comes from a home where his parents are strict and often cruel to him in ways that are played for laughs but are genuinely awful when you think about them. His father grounds him for the smallest reasons, sometimes for things that are not even his fault. His mother once tried to drown him in a car during a mental breakdown. He has every reason to be angry at the world, every reason to be mean and bitter and closed off, but instead he is sweet, hopeful, and almost painfully naive. He believes what people tell him. He looks for the good in everyone, including the one person who has absolutely no good to offer him. Butters calls Cartman his friend. Cartman calls Butters his tool. The show makes makes it very clear from early on that Cartman sees Butters differently than he sees the other kids. Kyle is an enemy, Stan is a nuisance, Kenny is disposable, but Butters is useful. Butters is the kid who will do what you tell him. If Cartman needs someone to go along with a plan, someone who will not ask too many questions, someone who will believe a lie no matter how obvious it is, Butters is always his first call. And Butters almost always says yes, because Butters thinks that helping Cartman means Cartman likes him. He confuses being needed with being valued. One of the best examples of this entire relationship is the season 8 episode Awesome-O. In this episode, Cartman comes up with a plan to learn all of Butters' most personal secrets so he can use them against him later. The plan is to dress up in a cardboard robot costume and pretend to be a Japanese robot called the Awesome-O 4000, delivered to Butters in a crate. Even though everyone else in town can clearly see that Awesome-O is just Cartman in boxes, Butters believes it completely. He is overjoyed. He thinks he has a new best friend. He sings songs about his robot friend. He takes Awesome-O everywhere with him. And here is the thing that makes this episode so much more than just a prank. As soon as Butters starts talking to his new robot friend, he opens up. He tells Awesome-O everything. He shares that he has a medical condition that sometimes causes him to lose control of his body. He talks about the kids at school who are mean to him. And then he mentions that there's this one boy named Eric Cartman who always tries to trick him. But Butters says he has protection now. He has a videotape of Cartman dressed up like Britney Spears, dancing around his room and kissing a cardboard cutout of Justin Timberlake. And he says that the next time Cartman tries to pull a prank on him, he is going to show that video to the whole town. Cartman, sitting inside his robot suit, panics. The entire reason he came up with this scheme was to get Butters' secrets. But now Butters has one of his secrets, and if Cartman reveals that Awesome-O is really him, that counts as another prank and Butters will release the tape. Cartman is trapped in his own plan. He has to keep pretending to be a robot. He cannot eat because robots do not eat, so he ends up starving for days, eventually sneaking into a bathroom to eat toothpaste. Butters makes the robot do his chores, carry his laundry, and even give him his medication. And through all of it, Butters is so happy. He thinks he finally has someone who will never leave him. He says Awesome-O is the best friend he has ever had. The episode gets crazier from there. Butters' parents let Awesome-O come along on a family trip to Los Angeles to visit relatives. Movie executives at a studio see the robot and think it can generate film ideas, so they hire it. Cartman, still trapped in the suit, pitches over 1,000 movie ideas, around 800 of which star Adam Sandler. Then the United States military finds out about the robot and captures it because they want to turn it into a weapon. Cartman tries to tell them he is just a kid, but they think the robot has developed such advanced intelligence that it believes it is human. They are about to drill into his head when Butters shows up to rescue his friend. Butters begs the military to let Awesome-O go. The general is moved by how much this little boy loves his robot. Everything is about to work out. And then Cartman farts. Butters hears the fart. He gets suspicious. He lifts the mask. And then he does exactly what he said he would do. He shows the Britney Spears video to the entire town, the movie executives, and the military. Everyone laughs at Cartman. For once, Butters wins. But here is the part that makes this episode matter so much for understanding their relationship. Butters did not set out to get revenge. He only used the tape because Cartman forced his hand. Butters would have been happy to just have a robot friend forever. He would have kept that tape hidden for the rest of his life if Cartman had simply left him alone. Butters does not want to hurt people. He just wants someone to be nice to him. And the tragedy is that the one person he keeps going back to for friendship is the one person in town who is least capable of giving it. This pattern repeats across the entire series. In Casa Bonita from season 7, Cartman desperately wants to go to Butters' birthday party at the Mexican restaurant Casa Bonita because he loves the food, the cliff divers, and the dark cave ride. It is his favorite place in the world. But he is not invited because Kyle is going instead and only 4 kids can attend. So Cartman tells Butters that a giant meteor is about to hit the earth and convinces him to hide in a bomb shelter for days, telling him the surface world has been destroyed. While Butters sits underground, terrified and alone, eating canned food and thinking the world has ended, Cartman takes his spot at the party and enjoys every minute of it. This is what Butters mentions to Awesome-O in the later episode. It is one of the cruelest things Cartman ever does, and what makes it worse is how easily Butters believed it. He trusted Cartman because that is what Butters does. In the death of Eric Cartman from season 9, all the boys decide to stop talking to Cartman because they are sick of his behavior. The last straw is that Cartman ate all the skin off a bucket of fried chicken that was meant for everyone. Every single single piece. He peeled the skin off and left the rest. The boys are furious, and they agree to pretend Cartman does not exist. They will not look at him, talk to him, or respond to anything he says. But nobody tells Butters about the plan. So when Cartman walks up to Butters and starts talking, Butters responds like normal because he has no idea what is going on. Cartman, seeing that everyone else is ignoring him and only Butters can see him, becomes convinced he must be dead. He thinks he is a ghost. Instead of correcting this, Butters, who does not know about the plan either, genuinely starts to believe Cartman might be a ghost. He can see Cartman and hear him, so maybe the other kids really cannot. The two of them go around town together, with Cartman trying to make up for his sins so his spirit can pass on to the other side. They visit people Cartman has wronged over the years and try to apologize. And during this whole adventure, Butters is loyal and kind and supportive, helping Cartman through what he believes is a real crisis, even though the entire situation exists because Cartman is too self-centered to figure out what is really happening. And then there is Margarine from season 9, where the boys want to get their hands on a device they believe the girls have that can tell the future. Their plan is to send someone undercover to a girl's slumber party disguised as a new girl in school. They pick Butters. They fake his death, hold a funeral, and send him to the party dressed as a girl named Margarine. Butters goes along with it because the boys ask him to, and Butters wants to be included. He wants to feel like part of the group. Meanwhile, his parents think he is actually dead and try to bring him back from the grave in a horrifying subplot. Butters does everything the boys ask, puts himself in danger and embarrassment, and gets almost nothing in return. What makes the Cartman and Butters relationship so important to the show is that it is not just comedy. It is not just the funny kid taking advantage of the dumb kid. It is a picture of how manipulation actually works in real life. Manipulators do not target the strongest people. They do not target the people who will fight back or see through the lie. They target the kindest ones. They target the people who want to see the best in others, who will give second chances and third chances and fourth chances because they believe that people can change. They target the people who are lonely or insecure or desperate for connection. Butters is all of those things. He wants a friend so badly that he will accept almost any treatment as long as it comes with the feeling of being included. And Cartman knows this. He counts on it every single time. Every scheme involving Butters is built on the same foundation. Cartman will offer something that looks like friendship, and Butters will take it, and then Cartman will use him and throw him away. And the next time Cartman needs something, he will come back, and Butters will be right there waiting, ready to believe that this time will be different. The one small hope in their story is that Butters is not completely powerless. He has moments where he stands up for himself, like when he shows the Awesome-O tape, or when he tells Cartman exactly what he thinks of him in certain episodes, but those moments are rare. Most of the time, Butters is the kid who gets used because his heart is too big and his memory for pain is too short. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And if Butters shows us what Cartman does to the people who trust him, then the next thing worth looking at is what happens when Cartman puts on a mask and tries to become something more than himself. Because in the Coon trilogy, Cartman does not just manipulate people, he tries to become a hero. And the gap between who he thinks he is and who he actually is has never been wider or funnier or more disturbing than when he puts on that costume. Section 7. The Coon. The philosophy of heroism and recognition. There is a moment in the Coon trilogy where Kenny, dressed as Mysterion, tells Cartman that he is the bad guy. And Cartman, who has teamed up with an ancient dark god who has destroyed buildings and banished his own friends to another dimension, who has used this cosmic power to wipe out a synagogue and attack San Francisco, looks at Kenny and says, no. He says he is making the world a better place. Kenny tells him he is only making it better for himself, and Cartman responds by saying that is what superheroes do. That one exchange tells you everything you need to know about how Eric Cartman views heroism. In his mind, a hero is not someone who sacrifices for others. A hero is someone who gets what they want and is praised for it. The Coon first appears in the season 13 episode of the same name. Cartman creates a superhero identity based on a raccoon. He puts on a costume with claws, patrols the streets of South Park at night, and narrates his adventures in a deep, serious voice that is clearly meant to sound like Batman from The Dark Knight. The whole thing is a parody of the dark, brooding superhero movies that were popular at the time. But what makes it more than just a parody is what it reveals about Cartman's understanding of what it means to be good. good. The Coon does not fight real crime. His first act as a hero is attacking a man who is kissing his girlfriend on a date because Cartman mistakes it for an assault. He scratches the man's face with his claws and reports it to the police as if he has just saved someone's life. The police are annoyed and threaten to arrest him. Nobody in South Park cares about the Coon. Nobody is impressed. Nobody is grateful. And this drives Cartman crazy because in his mind, putting on a costume and running around at night should automatically make everyone love him. He does not understand that heroism requires actually helping people. He thinks the costume is enough. He thinks the title is enough. Then Mysterion shows up. Another kid from school has created a superhero identity, and unlike the Coon, Mysterion is actually effective. He wears a hood and a cape with a question mark on it. He goes to the police and reports real crimes like graffiti and harassment from the movie theater guy. The police respect him. They welcome him into the station. The town talks about him constantly. News reports are dedicated to figuring out who this mysterious hero is. Students at school have pictures of Mysterion in their lockers. Wendy Testaberger even points out that nobody knows if Mysterion is a boy or a girl. Mysterion gets everything that Cartman wanted for himself, and he did not even have to ask for it. He just showed up and did good things, and the recognition followed naturally. Cartman is furious. He cannot accept that someone else is getting the attention he believes belongs to him. So instead of trying to become a better hero, instead of actually fighting crime or helping people, he focuses all of his energy on destroying Mysterion. He teams up with Butters, who is playing his villain identity, Professor Chaos, and pressures Butters into threatening to blow up a hospital unless Mysterion reveals his identity. A hospital full of sick people. Cartman is willing to let that happen just to unmask his competition. And when Mysterion does show up and eventually reveals himself to protect the town, Cartman gets him arrested for vigilantism. The Coon does not beat Mysterion by being a better hero. He beats him by getting him thrown in jail. That is Cartman's version of winning. The Coon saga continues in season 14 with a 3-part story. Coon 2, Hindsight, Mysterion Rises, and Coon vs. Coon and Friends. By this point, Cartman has formed a superhero team called Coon and Friends, which includes Mysterion, who is Kenny, Toolshed, Stan, Human Kite, Kyle, Mosquito, Clyde, and Mintberry Crunch, Bradley Biggle. The team operates out of Cartman's mother Leanne's basement, meeting around a table like a real superhero organization. And right from the start, the problem is obvious. Cartman created the team so he could be the leader. He named it after himself. He trademarked the name. He expects everyone to follow his orders and treat him like the most important person in the room. But nobody respects him because he does not actually do anything heroic. He just wants to sit at the head of the table and give commands. When a new hero called Captain Hindsight appears and starts getting all the public attention, Cartman loses it again. Captain Hindsight is a former news reporter named Jack Brolin who gained the power of perfect hindsight after a radioactive accident at the news station. He shows up at disaster scenes and tells everyone what they should have done to prevent the disaster. He says things like they should have used a different kind of cement or they should have built the structure stronger. He is completely useless in terms of actually helping anyone in the moment, but the public loves him because he always sounds smart and confident after the fact. Cartman sees Captain Hindsight as yet another threat to his status and tries to recruit him into Coon and Friends. But the real crisis of the trilogy is much bigger than any of that. A BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico accidentally opens a portal to a dark dimension, and an ancient cosmic creature named Cthulhu emerges. This is a being of unimaginable power, something that could destroy the entire world. And while the rest of Coon and Friends are trying to figure out how to stop this thing, Cartman sees an opportunity. The team votes to kick him out because he is not cooperating and keeps trying to control everything. His own mother even lets the other kids keep using the basement to play superheroes, which infuriates him. So Cartman goes to Cthulhu directly. And here is where Cartman's genius for manipulation shows up again in the most absurd way possible. He does not try to fight Cthulhu. He does not try to reason with it. He does not run away in fear like a normal person would. Instead, he acts cute. He introduces himself as the Little Coon and starts rubbing Cthulhu's belly, rolling around on the ground with the creature like a child playing with a giant stuffed animal. The whole scene is animated to look like something from the movie My Neighbor Totoro, with Cartman being sweet and innocent and adorable in a way that anyone who knows him would find terrifying. And it works. Cthulhu, this all-powerful dark god from beyond the stars, becomes friendly with Cartman. Cartman essentially tames the most dangerous being in the universe by being cute. He rides on Cthulhu's back like a kid riding a horse. He points at at things he does not like and Cthulhu destroys them. He uses a cosmic entity as his personal weapon of revenge against a group of 9-year-olds who hurt his feelings. With Cthulhu at his command, Cartman calls a press conference and declares himself and the creature the new Coon and Friends. Trademarked, of course. He goes on a rampage. He has Cthulhu banish his former teammates to a dark dimension called Relay. He destroys buildings. He wipes out a synagogue. He attacks San Francisco. And through all of it, he genuinely believes he is being a hero. He talks about cleaning up the world and making things better. He has no ability to see the destruction he is causing because, in his mind, if he is the one doing it, it must be good. If it serves his interests, it must be right. Meanwhile, the real hero of the trilogy is Kenny as Mysterion. And what makes Kenny's story so powerful compared to Cartman's is that Kenny has a real superpower, and it is a curse. Every time Kenny dies, he wakes up in his bed the next morning, completely alive and healthy. Nobody remembers that he died. Nobody knows about it except him. He has died hundreds of times throughout the series and always comes back. And the tragedy is that he carries all of those memories alone. In the trilogy, Kenny discovers that his parents were once members of a cult dedicated to Cthulhu, and their involvement in those rituals is somehow connected to why he cannot stay dead. He goes to his parents' house dressed as Mysterion to ask about it, and they casually tell him they only joined the cult for the free beer at the meetings. They do not even take it seriously. They barely remember. Kenny's curse, the thing that defines his entire existence, the reason he carries the weight of hundreds of deaths inside his memory, happened because his parents wanted free drinks at a party. The contrast between Cartman and Kenny in these episodes could not be sharper. Cartman puts on a costume and demands to be called a hero even though he hurts everyone around him. He wants parades and press conferences and people chanting his name. Kenny puts on a costume and actually tries to protect people, knowing full well that his reward will be dying again and again with nobody remembering it happened. Cartman wants the glory without the sacrifice. Kenny makes the sacrifice without any glory. Cartman sees heroism as a transaction. You put on the cape, you do the pose, and the world gives you love and power in return. Kenny sees it as something you do because somebody has to, and you are the only one who can. They are wearing the same kinds of costumes, they are playing the same game on the same team. But everything underneath, every reason they do what they do is completely different. And the show never has to spell this out directly, it just puts the two of them side by side and lets the audience see it for themselves. The trilogy ends with Mintberry Crunch of all characters being the one who defeats Cthulhu using his actual alien powers. Cartman is captured and locked in a jail cell with Butters, who has a bucket of his own waste and nothing else. When Cartman complains about the terrible conditions, Stan quotes Cartman's own words back to him. Cartman is left sitting in a cell, stripped of his power, stripped of his costume, stripped of everything that made him feel like he was somebody. And he still does not understand what he did wrong. That is the entire philosophy of the Coon in one image. A kid who wanted so badly to be seen as a hero that he became the villain. And even at the very end, even sitting in a cell surrounded by the consequences of everything he has done, he still thinks the world is wrong and he is right. He still thinks he deserved better. He still thinks he was the good guy all along. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And if the Coon shows us what happens when Cartman tries to become a hero on his own terms, then the next episode worth examining is the one time someone else's terms almost worked on him. The one time someone walked into Cartman's life, saw exactly what he was, and came dangerously close to fixing him. That episode is Tist, and what happens in it is one of the most hopeful and one of the saddest moments in the entire series. Section 8. The one time Cartman almost changed out. Of every episode in South Park's entire run, Tst might be the most important one for understanding who Eric Cartman really is. Not because it shows him at his worst. We have seen him at his worst plenty of times. It matters because it shows him at his best. It shows us the version of Cartman that could have existed if things had gone differently. And then it shows us exactly why that version was never going to last. The episode opens in the school counselor's office. Mr. Mackey has called Leanne Cartman in because her son has done something terrible again. This time, Cartman handcuffed a student named Billy Turner to a flagpole. He told Billy that he had poisoned his lunch milk and that the only way to reach the antidote in time was to saw through his own leg with a hacksaw. It is a recreation of a scene from the movie Saw, done by a 9-year-old to another child because that child made fun of his weight. Leanne sits in the chair and cries. She admits she has lost control. She says Cartman runs the house and she does not know what to do about it anymore. Mr. Mackey suggests she try some of the nanny shows on television, so Leanne brings in a nanny from the show Nanny 911. Her name is Nanny Stella. She arrives with a camera crew and immediately tries to set boundaries. She takes away Cartman's Xbox 360, and Cartman, within minutes, destroys her. He does not hit her or scream at her. He gets inside her head. He asks her why she does not have children of her own. He picks at her personal insecurities, the things she is most sensitive about, and he uses them like weapons. He spits in her mouth when she tries to talk to him. Nanny Stella leaves in tears. The next attempt is with Joe Frost from Super Nanny. We do not even see what Cartman does to her. The show just cuts to 3 days later and she is in a psychiatric hospital, sitting on the floor, eating her own waste, and screaming that Cartman is from hell. Two professional child behavior experts, women who have made careers out of dealing with difficult kids, are both completely broken by a 4th grader. This is the show telling us something important. Cartman's problem is not that nobody has ever tried to fix him. People have tried. Professionals have tried. The problem is that Cartman is smarter than the people trying to help him. He understands how manipulation works better than any adult in his life. He can read weakness in a person's face and exploit it before they even realize what is happening. Normal approaches do not work on him because normal approaches assume the child wants to be good but just needs structure. Cartman does not want to be good. He wants to be in control. And any system that treats him like a regular, misbehaving kid is going to fail, because he is not a regular, misbehaving kid. And then Cesar Millan arrives. Cesar Millan is the host of a show called The Dog Whisperer. He is a dog trainer, not a child behavior expert, not a therapist, not a nanny, a man who trains dogs. And the reason he succeeds where everyone else failed is that he does not treat Cartman like a person. He treats him like an aggressive, dominant, overweight dog who has been given too many treats and not enough exercise. He does not try to reason with Cartman. He does not try to understand him. He does not engage with his insults or his tantrums or his mind games. He simply establishes dominance. The technique is physical and simple. Millan uses 2 fingers to nip at Cartman's neck while making an aggressive sound, a sharp tst. It is what dogs do to each other to establish who is the leader of the pack. He teaches Leanne to do the same thing. Every time Cartman acts out, every time he raises his voice or tries to take control of the situation, Leanne nips him on the neck and makes the sound. No negotiation, no long conversation about feelings, no giving in, just a firm, consistent correction every single time. And it works. For the first time in his entire life, Cartman encounters a system he cannot hack and a person he cannot break. He cannot manipulate Cesar Millan because Millan is not interested in having a conversation. He is not interested in Cartman's feelings or his excuses. He does not even look at Cartman most of the time. He talks to Leanne about the child as if Cartman is not in the room. He tells her that the child thinks her world revolves around him because it does. Everything Cartman does gets a response from her, and that response is what feeds his behavior. Cartman tries his usual move. He runs away from home. This has always worked before because Leanne panics and begs him to come back. But this time, Millan tells Leanne to stay calm and wait. He assures her that Cartman will return on his own. And he is right. Cartman goes to the homes of every kid he knows. He asks Stan, Kyle, Kenny, Butters, Jimmy, and Craig if he can stay with them. Every single one of them says no. When Cartman tries to tell Jimmy that they are best friends, Jimmy asks him a simple question. What is my last name? Cartman cannot answer. He does not know. He has never cared enough to learn the last names of the people he calls his friends. None of the kids want anything to do with him. He ends up sitting alone in a dark alley in the rain for hours before walking back home. When he returns, the house has changed. His mother is calm. She is painting, doing a Japanese hobby she had given up long ago. Caesar is still there. Cartman is served a healthy dinner instead of junk food. When he tries to make a scene and threatens to call social services, Leanne nips him. He reaches what Millan calls a calm and submissive state. He brushes his teeth when she tells him to. He goes to bed on time. And for the first time, Cartman starts to realize that something inside him is changing. This is where the episode becomes something more than comedy. Cartman lies awake at night and feels himself losing the thing that has defined him his whole life. His control over his mother. His ability to get whatever he wants. The rage and selfishness that have been the engine of everything he does. He can feel it slipping away and he is terrified. So he decides to kill his mother. He makes a plan. He draws a diagram. He gets a knife and a roll of paper towels. Late at night, he walks down the hallway toward his mother's bedroom. And as he walks, the episode shows his body physically transforming, twisting and changing like a scene from a horror movie. He reaches her bedside. He raises the knife. And then something happens that has almost never happened before in the history of this character. His conscience appears. In a scene that looks like something from the movie Contact, Cartman has a battle inside his own mind. A good version of himself and an evil version fight for control. The good version tells him that he does not have to do this, that he can be better, that the anger and the cruelty are not who he has to be. The evil version tells him to finish the job, and for once, the good version wins. Cartman drops the knife. He collapses in the hallway. He vomits a stream of dark black liquid, as if the evil inside him is being physically pushed out. He passes out on the floor. The next morning, Leanne comes downstairs and finds her son sitting at the kitchen table. He is eating a healthy breakfast. He is doing his homework. He is calm and polite and everything a parent would want. This is the Eric Cartman who could have existed. The one who is buried under all of that rage and selfishness and cruelty. The one who needed structure and boundaries and a parent who said no. And for one brief, beautiful morning, he is real. And then the episode destroys it. Cesar Millan comes by for a final visit. Leanne is so grateful for his help and so lonely that she asks him to go see an opera called Madame Butterfly with her. She is trying to turn their professional relationship into a friendship, maybe something more. But Milan, who treats every interaction like a professional engagement, politely tells her that she is just a client. He has other work to do. He leaves. And that is all it takes. Leanne is crushed. Her son was her best friend, or at least he was the only person in her life who gave her attention. Now her son has been reformed, and the one person she connected with during that process has left. She is alone. So she turns to Cartman and asks him if he will go with her to the show instead. He says no. She says she will take him to KFC and buy him a Mega Ranger toy. He asks if he can have two. And Leanne, desperate for company, desperate to not be alone, says yes. She tells him he can have whatever he wants. Whatever he wants. The exact phrase that created the problem in the first place. The show ends with Cartman hugging his mother, while ominous music from the movie The Omen plays over the scene. His smile is innocent on the surface, but evil underneath. The old Cartman is back. The reset button has been pressed. Everything Cesar Millan built has been undone in 30 seconds because Leanne Cartman cannot stand being alone. This episode matters because it answers one of the biggest questions about Cartman's character. Can he change? The answer is yes. He absolutely can. The good version of him exists somewhere inside that body. The battle in the hallway proved it. He chose not to kill his mother. He chose to put down the knife. He chose to be better. For one morning, he was a genuinely good kid, eating cereal and doing homework like any normal child in America. But the environment he lives in will not let that version of him survive. His mother's loneliness, her deep need to be loved by someone, her inability to maintain boundaries without someone physically standing over her shoulder and coaching her through it. These are the forces that keep Cartman the way he is. Cesar Millan fixed the child, but nobody fixed the parent. And without fixing the parent, the child was always going to slide back. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And if tst shows us that Cartman is capable of change but trapped in a cycle that prevents it, then the next question is what happens when you take away the cycle entirely? What happens when Cartman enters the adult world and has to build a life from scratch? That is exactly what the post-COVID specials try to answer, and the version of Cartman we find there is perhaps the most surprising one of all. Section 9, Cartman as businessman. Schemes in the American dream. Eric Cartman might be the best businessman in South Park. That sounds like a joke, but it is actually one of the most interesting things about his character. For a kid who fails at almost everything he does in terms of personal relationships and basic human decency, Cartman has an incredible talent for seeing opportunities and building something out of nothing. The problem is that every business he creates is built on the suffering of other people, the exploitation of something vulnerable, or the complete disregard for any rule that gets in his way. And the show uses this pattern to say something sharp about what the American dream actually looks like when you strip away all the nice language. The most obvious example is Cartman Land from season 5, which we covered earlier. Cartman inherits $1 million, buys a failing amusement park, and accidentally creates the most successful business in the region by refusing to let anyone in. The demand for something exclusive drives the public crazy. Experts on the news call it marketing genius. And Cartman has no idea what he has done because he was never trying to run a business in the first place. He was just trying to keep everyone out. The lesson of that episode is that Cartman understands something about human desire that most people do not. People want what they cannot have. And Cartman, because he is selfish enough to deny everyone everything, accidentally creates the perfect business model. Of course, the moment he has to let people in to pay for maintenance and security, the whole thing collapses. Because Cartman can start something brilliant, but he can never sustain it. His selfishness is both the engine and the bomb. But Cartman's most disturbing business venture comes in the season 15 episode, Crack Baby Athletic Association. In this episode, Cartman sees a sad television commercial featuring Sarah McLachlan asking people to help babies who were born addicted to crack. Kyle is so moved by the commercial that he goes to the local hospital to volunteer. When he gets there, he finds Cartman already volunteering, which immediately makes Kyle suspicious. He follows Cartman and discovers the truth. Cartman, along with Craig, Clyde, and Butters, has started a business called the Crack Baby Athletic Association. They take the babies from the hospital, put them in a room together with a ball filled with crack, and film the babies fighting over it. They broadcast the fights on the internet. The site is getting 1,000 hits a day. Kyle is horrified. This is one of the most morally disgusting things he has ever seen Cartman do, and that is saying a lot. He says he is going to tell someone. But then Cartman shows him the money. The business is profitable, very profitable. And slowly, against every instinct in his body and against his own conscience, Kyle agrees to join as the accountant. He tells himself it is so he can keep an eye on things. He tells himself he can steer the company in a better direction from the inside. But the show watches Kyle transform over the course of the episode. He starts rationalizing. He starts justifying. He tells Stan that the babies are being helped because the business is giving them attention and a place to stay. Stan just looks at him in silence. Kyle is turning into Cartman, and the most terrifying part is how smoothly it happens. All it takes is money. Cartman, meanwhile, is trying to figure out how to make the business even bigger. He wants to sell the rights to EA Sports so they can make a video game based on the crack baby fights. But Kyle raises a concern. If they are going to sell the babies' likenesses, should they not give the babies something in return? Kyle suggests spending 30% of the money on building a state-of-the-art orphanage for the crack babies. And here's the surprise. Cartman agrees. Not because he cares about the babies. He agrees because an orphanage is good public relations. It makes the business look charitable. Cartman has figured out something that real corporations figured out a long time ago. If you put a nice face on an ugly business, people will leave you alone. To find out how to legally profit from people without paying them, Cartman visits the athletic department at the University of Colorado Boulder. He dresses up as a southern plantation owner from the 1800s and talks to the dean about their slave trade, meaning the college basketball team. He asks how the university gets away with not paying their athletes while making millions off their performance. The dean is offended and throws him out, but the scene is the show making a direct comparison between Cartman's crack baby fights and the NCAA system. Both profit from the labor of people who see none of the money. Both use language like student athletes or charitable organization to disguise what is really happening. Cartman is just more honest about what he is doing because he does not care enough to hide it. The deal with EA Sports falls apart when the company takes over the entire business, keeps all the rights, and refuses to pay Cartman or the boys anything. Kyle's dream of building the orphanage is crushed. The episode ends with a small miracle. Kyle and Stan discover that the orphanage has somehow been built anyway, with evidence that the mythical guitarist Slash may have paid for it, but the damage to Kyle's conscience has already been done. He spent an entire episode becoming the thing he hated most, and the only thing that stopped him was an outside force taking the business away. This pattern shows up over and over in the show. In Medicinal Fried Chicken from season 14, all the KFC restaurants in Colorado are shut down to make way for marijuana dispensaries. Cartman, who is completely addicted to KFC fried chicken, goes into immediate withdrawal. He is sweating, shaking, and unable to function without it. He tries everything to get his fix, so he enters the black market. He starts working for a man named Billy Miller, who, along with Colonel Sanders himself, is smuggling illegal KFC into the state through underground channels. Cartman does not just work for them as a low-level employee. He rises through the ranks quickly because he understands the business better than anyone else. He overthrows Billy and takes over the entire operation. He becomes a fried chicken kingpin, running the smuggling ring like a full-blown drug cartel. He has product, he has distribution, and he has customers who are desperate for their fix. The episode is a direct parody of Scarface and other crime movies, with Cartman playing the ambitious gangster who starts at the bottom and claws his way to the top of an illegal empire. And just like in those movies, his greed and his refusal to follow orders from Colonel Sanders eventually bring the whole thing crashing down. A hit is taken out on him and he nearly loses everything. What all of these business episodes share is a single idea. Cartman is brilliant at seeing how the world works. He sees that people want things, that systems can be exploited, and that if you are willing to do what others will not, there is money to be made. He is not wrong about any of this. Every business he creates actually works, at least for a while. The crack baby fights make money. The KFC smuggling operation is profitable. Cartmanland is a sensation. The problem is never the business idea. The problem is always Cartman himself. His greed, his cruelty, his inability to share power or treat people fairly, these are the things that destroy every empire he builds. And the show is saying something bigger through all of this. It is saying that the difference between Cartman's schemes and many real-world businesses is smaller than people want to admit. The NCAA does profit from unpaid labor. Corporations do use charity as public relations. The demand for something exclusive does drive consumer behavior in irrational ways. Cartman is a mirror held up to the parts of capitalism that people prefer not to look at. He is what a system that rewards selfishness looks like when there are no rules and no shame. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And if Cartman uses business to exploit the people around him in the physical world, then the next thing worth examining is how he uses something even more powerful to do the same thing. Because when Cartman discovers religion, he does not use it to find meaning or comfort. He uses it the way he uses everything else, as a weapon. Section 10, Cartman and Religion, Faith as a Weapon. Eric Cartman does not believe in God. He does not believe in Jesus. He does not believe in heaven or hell or anything beyond his own wants and needs. But Cartman understands something about religion that makes him very dangerous. He understands that other people believe. And as long as other people believe, their faith is something he can use. The show makes this point across several episodes, but the clearest and most important one is the season 4 two-parter, Do the Handicapped Go to Hell? And Probably. These episodes start with Father Maxey giving a terrifying sermon about damnation that scares the boys into obsessing over sin and salvation. They start attending Sunday school with a nun named Sister Anne, who teaches them about confession and the rules of getting into heaven. The kids begin to panic. They learn that Kyle, because he is Jewish, will go to hell. They learn that Timmy, because he cannot confess his sins, will also go to hell. Suddenly, the rules of religion seem cruel and unfair, even to kids who are trying their hardest to follow them. Then things get worse. The boys rush to the church to confess their sins, and they catch Father Maxey having sex with a woman in the confessional booth. A woman runs out, and Father Maxey drops to his knees begging for forgiveness, yelling that Mrs. Donovan is a temptress from hell. The boys are horrified. The man who told them they would burn forever for their sins cannot even follow the rules himself. So the boys decide that the church is broken and they need to save everyone on their own. This is where Cartman steps in. He grabs a bullhorn, puts on a southern preacher accent, and starts directing a crowd of frightened children toward a new religious movement. In Probably, the kids build a small church where they skip school, avoid their homes, and listen to Cartman preach like a televangelist. He waves his hands, he shouts about sin and damnation. He slaps people on the forehead and declares them healed by the power of God. The children are terrified and devoted in equal measure. They give Cartman their money. They follow his every word. And Cartman, who has been watching real televangelists on television, copies their style perfectly because he recognizes what they are really doing. They are selling fear and charging people for relief from it. Stan and Kyle eventually find Cartman swimming in cash in the back room of the church. He does not even try to hide what is happening. He confesses easily that the entire thing has been a scheme to make $10 million. He mentions that his earlier plans, the Tooth Fairy thing and the boy band thing, did not work out, so he moved on to religion because it is a better product. Stan and Kyle are disgusted but helpless. As long as the other children keep coming and keep giving their money, there is nothing they can do. The episode resolves when Sister Anne brings Jesus himself to speak to the children. Jesus tells them that God does not want them to spend every waking minute worshiping and fearing hell. God wants them to help others and live good, happy lives. The children, touched by this simple message, agree and leave to return to their normal lives. And Jesus punishes Cartman by sending him somewhere worse than hell. He sends him to Ensenada, Mexico, which is where Kenny has been stranded the entire episode after being hit by a bus and dragged hundreds of miles. What makes this two-parter so important for understanding Cartman is that he does not fail because his plan was bad. His plan was excellent. He identified a vulnerable audience, people who were afraid of death and punishment. He copied a proven model, the televangelist formula of fear and salvation. He created emotional dependence and then charged for it. The only thing that stopped him was an outside force, Jesus himself showing up to tell the children the truth. truth. Without that intervention, Cartman would have kept going. The scheme was working perfectly. This same understanding of religion as a tool shows up again in the season 7 episode, Christian Rock Hard. In this episode, the boys are trying to form a band called Moop, but cannot agree on a musical direction. Kyle likes fusion, Kenny likes Latin jazz, and Stan is more into hip-hop. Cartman suggests they play Christian rock because, in his words, it is the easiest and crappiest music in the world. He points to the success of the band Creed as proof that it works. The other boys kick him out. Furious, Cartman bets Kyle $10 that he can get a platinum album before Kyle's band does. He recruits Butters on drums and Tolkien on bass. Tolkien says he does not even have a bass guitar, but Cartman insists he must because he is black. When Tolkien goes home, he finds a bass guitar in his basement, and it turns out he actually can play. The band is called Faith Plus One, and their method is simple. Cartman takes regular love songs and replaces words like baby and darling with Jesus. The result is music that sounds like the band is in a romantic relationship with Jesus. One of the songs includes the line about getting down on his knees and pleasing Jesus and feeling his salvation all over his face. The songs are obviously absurd, but the Christian audience does not care. They hear the name of Jesus and they buy the album. Faith Plus One becomes a massive success. The album sells over 1 million copies. They are signed by a Christian label called Faith Records. Kyle's band, meanwhile, has been on strike the whole time, protesting illegal music downloading, joining famous musicians like Metallica and Britney Spears. Kyle has been so busy protecting his music that he forgot to create any. When he hears about Cartman's sales numbers, he is ready to admit defeat and pay the $10. But Cartman does not just want to win, he wants to humiliate Kyle. He spends all of the money Faith Plus One has earned on a huge, lavish award ceremony. He invites the whole town, and then, on stage, in front of everyone, he learns the truth. Christian record companies do not give out platinum albums. They give out gold, frankincense, and myrrh records named after the gifts given to Jesus at his birth. Cartman's album has earned a myrrh certification, not platinum. Kyle, standing in the crowd, points out that the bet was for a platinum album, not a myrrh album. He does not owe Cartman anything. Cartman loses his mind. He screams, "God damn it," and then "fuck Jesus" in front of the entire crowd. The Christian fans scream in horror and flee. Tolkien, who has put up with Cartman's racism and selfishness the entire episode, finally snaps. He beats Cartman to the ground and walks away. Butters, who almost never stands up for himself, walks over to the beaten Cartman, farts in his face, says, "Fuck you, Eric," gives him the finger, and leaves. Cartman is left alone on the stage, beaten, humiliated, and broke. He blew every dollar of his success on a party to mock Kyle, and he lost even that. The pattern is always the same. Cartman sees faith not as something real, but as something useful. He sees believers not as people with deep convictions, but as customers who will buy whatever has the right label on it. And the terrifying thing is that he is usually right. The children improbably gave him their money. The Christian music fans bought every album. Nobody questioned whether Cartman actually believed in any of it until it was too late. The show explores this from the opposite direction in the season 16 episode, Jupacabra. In this episode, Cartman invents a creature called the Jupacabra, a blood-sucking beast that he claims preys on children during Passover. His real goal is to scare everyone away from the superfoods Easter egg hunt so he can have all the chocolate eggs for himself. He takes Butters into the woods to film supposed evidence, which is actually just a blurry video of a dog. He shows the footage to the superfoods executives, who panic and give Cartman unlimited resources to stop the creature. Cartman uses those resources to take a trip to the Bahamas water park before eventually taking the video to the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, who confirm the footage is real because they are idiots. The scheme backfires in the worst possible way. Cartman starts to actually believe his own lie. He becomes genuinely terrified of the Jupacabra. He locks himself in a church with Butters, Craig, and Tolkien standing guard, paying them $20 for protection. The superfoods executives then kidnap Cartman, dress him in an Easter bunny costume, cover him in chicken blood, and chain him to a stake in the park as a sacrifice to the Jupacabra. Kyle visits Cartman in the park and offers to free him if he admits the Jupacabra is not real, but Cartman cannot do it. He has frightened himself so badly with his own lie that he now truly believes the creature exists. Kyle leaves. The Bigfoot researchers then show up, mistake Cartman for a bunny honey man and shoot him with a tranquilizer dart. While unconscious, Cartman has a vivid dream set in ancient Egypt during the biblical plagues. He is the son of the pharaoh. Kyle appears as a Hebrew slave and explains that God is killing the firstborn sons of Egypt because the pharaoh will not let the Jewish people go. Cartman watches the plagues happen around him. He watches children die. He watches lambs slaughtered. His own head explodes in the dream. When Cartman wakes up the next morning, he is in his own bed. Kyle, whose conscience got the better of him, came back to the park, freed Cartman, carried him home, covered him with a blanket, and took off his shoes. At the Easter egg hunt the next day, Cartman announces to everyone that he has had a religious experience and has converted to Judaism. He tells the crowd they should recognize Jehovah as their true God and deny Christ. The Christians call him a heathen and go back to their egg hunt. Cartman then approaches Kyle and says he finally understands what it feels like to have your religion mocked. Kyle, after everything Cartman has put him through over the years, simply wishes him a happy Passover. The camera rises to a Star of David shining inside the sun. Now, the show leaves it open whether Cartman's conversion is real or another scheme. Given everything we know about him, it is almost certainly temporary. But the dream sequence matters. For one brief moment, Cartman experienced what it felt like to be on the other side, to be powerless, to watch something terrifying happen to people who looked like him, to be saved by the very person he has spent years tormenting. Whether he learned anything lasting from it is doubtful, but the show allowed the possibility to exist, even if only for a moment. Across all of these episodes, the show uses Cartman to ask a question that has nothing to do with whether God is real. It asks what happens when someone treats faith like a product. What happens when belief is not something you hold inside yourself, but something you sell to other people? And the answer, every single time, is that it works. It works until the person selling it reveals who they really are. Cartman can fake faith better than almost anyone. What he cannot fake is caring about anyone but himself. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously, and it is that total inability to care about other people that makes his story in the post-COVID specials so surprising. Because for the first time in his life, Cartman appears to have changed, and whether that change is real or just his greatest manipulation yet is the question that the show saves for last. Section 11. Post-COVID Cartman, the greatest trick he ever pulled. For 24 years, the question that sat underneath every Eric Cartman episode was the same one. Can he change? We saw the answer in Tst when Caesar Milan fixed his behavior and Leanne undid it in a single evening. We saw it in Chupacabra when he briefly converted to Judaism and the show left the door open just a crack. We saw the possibility flicker and die over and over again. And then came the post-COVID specials, and the show did something nobody expected. It showed us a future where Cartman had changed completely, and then it made us watch as that change was taken away from him forever. South Park Post-COVID premiered on Paramount Plus on Thanksgiving 2021. The story is set 40 years in the future, in the year 2061. The COVID pandemic is finally winding down, and the old friends are brought back together by the death of Kenny McCormick. Kenny had become a famous scientist and millionaire, spending his entire life researching the origins of COVID and trying to build a time machine to fix the future. He left behind a message saying that if he died, his closest friends would know where to find his missing data if they could just think like kids again. Stan Marsh has moved away from South Park and works as an online whiskey consultant. He lives with an Amazon Alexa that projects itself as a nagging hologram. He has not spoken to Kyle or his father Randy in years. Kyle Broflovsky has stayed in South Park and works as the guidance counselor at South Park Elementary. He still lives in his parents' old house, alone, with their photos on the wall. Jimmy Valmer has become a late-night talk show host in New York, though his jokes have become so safe and inoffensive that they are barely funny anymore. Tolkien Black is a law enforcement officer. Tweek and Craig are still together. Wendy Testaberger is married to a man named Darwin, and Clyde Donovan is still unvaccinated, which becomes important later. But the biggest shock comes when Eric Cartman walks into Kenny's wake. He has converted to Judaism. He is a rabbi. He leads a congregation in Colorado Springs. He wears a tallit everywhere he goes, and his old blue hat now serves as a kippah. He has a Jewish wife named Yentl and 3 children named Moishe, Menorah, and Hakam. He hugs his kids. He quotes the Torah during intimate moments with his wife. He seems by every measure like a completely different person. Kyle does not believe it for 1 second. He is convinced that the entire thing, the wife, the kids, the congregation, the conversion, all of it is a scheme designed to mess with him. That after 40 years, Cartman is still playing the long game. When circumstances force Cartman's family to stay at Kyle's house during a new COVID lockdown, Kyle cannot handle it. He confronts Cartman in the middle of the night, telling Yentl that this man once snuck into his room and injected him with HIV-infected blood. Cartman quietly promises that his family will leave in the morning. His children, confused and upset, say it reminds them of when their people were exiled from the Holy Land. The audience is put in the same position as Kyle. We have watched Cartman lie, cheat, manipulate, and destroy for over 2 decades. We have watched him fake emotion so convincingly that the people around him could not tell the difference. We have watched him start a fake church for money and a fake Christian band for a bet. So when he shows up as a rabbi with a loving family, our first instinct is the same as Kyle's. This has to be fake. This has to be the con of a lifetime, but the specials never confirm that. We see Cartman hug his children with what appears to be genuine love. We see him interact with his wife in ways that do not seem performed. We see his kids call Kyle Uncle Kyle and say Toda Rabbah in Hebrew as thanks for letting them stay. The show deliberately keeps us uncertain, and that uncertainty is the entire point. In South Park Post-COVID, The Return of COVID, the second special, the group discovers that Kenny's real plan was not to prevent the pandemic. It was to salvage the friendship between Stan, Kyle, and Cartman, which he believed was the actual thing that ruined the future. Kenny had spent his whole life trying to fix what he called his 3 dickhead friends, and he believed that if they had not let the pandemic drive them apart, everything would have turned out differently. This is where Cartman's story becomes heartbreaking. When he realizes that Stan and Kyle plan to use time travel to change the past and fix the future, Cartman panics. Because if the future changes, his life changes. His wife might never exist. His children might never be born. His congregation, his faith, his family, everything he has built over 40 years could be erased. And so he fights back. Cartman takes his family to the South Park church and hides them in the attic, forming something he calls the Foundation Against Time Travel. He captures Tweek and Craig when they accidentally reveal what the group is planning. He convinces Clyde to join his side. He recruits Victor Chaos, who turns out to be an older and institutionalized Butter Stotch, and uses him to brainwash the other characters into investing in NFTs, while Cartman steals the time travel equipment. For a while, it looks like old Cartman is back. He is scheming, he is manipulating, he is willing to destroy other people's chances at a better life to protect his own. At one point, he even plans to send Clyde back in time to kill young Kyle, which would prevent any of this from happening. Kyle's suspicion seems vindicated. Cartman has not changed at all. He is the same monster he has always been, just wearing a nicer costume. But then something happens that changes everything. Yentl, his wife, sees what he is becoming. She watches him revert to the angry, selfish, violent person he used to be, and she is horrified. She does not recognize this version of him, and when she confronts him, Cartman stops. He looks at her, he looks at his children, and he realizes what he is doing. The fear of losing his family has turned him back into the person who did not deserve a family in the first place. Yentl convinces Cartman to let Kyle and Stan go through with their plan. She tells him that she has faith they will find each other in a different timeline, that their love is real enough to survive the change. Cartman agrees. He chooses to trust that his life meant something, even if it gets erased. He chooses his family's belief in him over his own fear. Then chaos breaks loose. Cartman's baby accidentally activates the time machine and sends Clyde back to the past. Adult Clyde retrieves his father's gun, convinces his younger self not to get vaccinated, and then tries to kill young Kyle. Stan, Kyle, and Cartman all travel back in time to stop him, and it is Cartman who shoots Clyde dead before he can pull the trigger. Cartman saves Kyle's life, the kid he tormented for decades, the kid he gave HIV, the kid he tried to have killed 5 minutes earlier in the story. Cartman saves him. Stuck in the past, the 3 men realize they cannot stop the pandemic from happening, but they can change how they reacted to it. They approach a student named Heather Williams and blackmail her using a photo Cartman had taken of her farting in gym class, and they use her family's connections to get their younger selves courtside tickets to a Denver Nuggets game. At the game, the boys forgive each other. Stan also sends a marijuana seed back to the past for Randy, which creates a strain powerful enough to make the entire town forgive each other for their behavior during the pandemic. The future changes. Almost everyone's life is better. Stan has joined the Space Force and is with Wendy. Kyle has 2 kids. Kenny is alive and wins a Nobel Prize. Jimmy is doing comedy again. Sharon and Shelly, who died in the original timeline, are both alive. Butters never went insane. Everything is better, except for Cartman. In the new timeline, Cartman is homeless. He is a bitter alcoholic living on the street. He has no wife, he has no children, he has no congregation, he has nothing. Stan and Kyle watch him from a window window during what appears to be a holiday gathering, and Stan says, "Man, poor Cartman." From across the street, Cartman screams back at them, "Fuck you guys! You can suck my fucking dick!" Kyle says, "It is so sad he never did anything with his life." Cartman screams, "Fuck you, Kyle! Fuck you, Stan!" Butters walks by and tries to include him. Cartman screams, "Fuck you, Butters!" Butters, echoing the exact same line from Christian Rock Hard all those years ago, responds with, "Fuck you, Eric." This is the ending the show gives its most complex character. In a timeline where the pandemic did not destroy everyone's friendships, Cartman never had the crisis that led him to change. Without the pain of losing everything, without 40 years of isolation and reflection, Cartman just stayed Cartman. He stayed selfish, he stayed angry, he stayed alone. The version of him that became a loving father and a devoted husband and a man of faith only existed because the worst thing in the world happened to him first. The show is asking something enormous with this ending. It is asking whether the capacity to change matters if the circumstances that caused the change are taken away. Cartman proved that he could become a good person. He proved it with decades of evidence, with a wife who loved him, with children who adored him, with a community that trusted him. But that version of Cartman only existed in a broken world. In a healthy world where his friends stayed friends and families stayed whole, Cartman apparently never found a reason to become anything better than what he started as. It is, without question, the cruelest thing the show has ever done to him. Not because it punished him unfairly, but because it suggested that his redemption was real and then erased it anyway. The good Cartman existed. He was not faking it. Yentl was real. Moisha and Menorah and Hacham were real. The faith was real. And none of it survived the creation of a better world. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That is the tragedy of Eric Cartman, delivered in 2 streaming specials that managed to say more about his character than most full seasons ever did. And it leaves us with one final question that the show has been building toward since the very first episode. What does Eric Cartman actually mean? Not as a character in a story, but as an idea. What is the philosophy of Eric Cartman? That is what we will try to answer now. Section 12. The philosophy of Eric Cartman. So what does Eric Cartman mean? Not as a cartoon character, not as a punchline, but as an idea. After everything we have walked through, every scheme, every betrayal, every moment where he almost became something better and then did not, what is the show actually saying through him? The easiest answer is that Cartman is a warning. He is what happens when selfishness goes unchecked. When a child grows up without a father, with a mother who is too lonely and too afraid of being alone to ever say no, when every bad impulse is rewarded and every boundary is missing, you get Eric Cartman. You get a person who sees other human beings as tools or obstacles. You get someone who can feel love and need and fear, but who has never been taught that other people feel those things too. That answer is true, but it is not the whole truth, because the show does something much more uncomfortable than just showing us a bad kid. It shows us a bad kid who is often right about how the world works. Cartman understood in Cartmanland that people want what they cannot have, and the business world proved him correct. He understood in Crack Baby Athletic Association that corporations exploit people and use charity as a mask, and the NCAA system proved him correct. He understood in Christian Rock Hard that faith can be packaged and sold to people who are not paying close enough attention, and the Christian music industry proved him correct. He understood in Probably that fear is the most profitable product you can sell, and every televangelist in America proved him correct. Cartman is not stupid. That is what makes him so dangerous and so useful as a character. He sees the machinery behind the curtain. He sees the selfishness that drives systems and institutions. He sees the gap between what people say they believe and how they actually behave. And then he exploits that gap because exploiting it is the only thing he knows how to do. He never learned another way. The show uses Cartman to hold up a mirror to the audience. When he dresses as Hitler and leads the townspeople through the streets chanting in German, and they follow him because they think the words are Aramaic from a movie they liked, the joke is not really on Cartman. The joke is on the crowd. When he starts a church and the children hand over their money because they are afraid of hell, the joke is not on Cartman. The joke is on every system that uses fear to control people. When he fakes being a superhero and demands praise while Kenny dies in silence over and over again, the joke is on every culture that rewards the loudest voice instead of the one making the actual sacrifice. When he manipulates Butters into doing terrible things and Butters keeps coming back because he confuses being needed with being valued, the joke is on every relationship where one person gives everything and the other person takes it without a second thought. Cartman works as a character because he is the version of us that we do not want to admit exists. Everyone has felt the pull of selfishness. Everyone has wanted something and not cared, at least for a moment, who got hurt in the process. Everyone has told themselves a story about why their bad behavior was actually justified. Everyone has rewritten a memory to make themselves the hero, the way Cartman rewrote the fish sticks joke until he believed he wrote it himself. Cartman is what happens when that voice wins every single time. When there is no counter, no conscience, no Kyle standing there saying, dude, that is messed up. Or rather, when Kyle is standing there saying that and you simply do not care. But the show complicates even this reading, because Cartman is not just selfishness, he is also loneliness. Go back to the beginning. Go back to the kid sitting in a house with a mother who will give him anything except the one thing he actually needs, which is structure and honesty and the feeling that someone cares enough to tell him no. Go back to Le Petit Tourette, where he accidentally admits on live television that he cries at night because he does not have a father. Go back to where Cesar Millan fixes his behavior in days, proving that the problem was never that Cartman could not change, but that nobody in his life was willing to do the hard work of making change stick. Eric Cartman is a kid who has failed, and the show never lets you forget that, even when he is at his most evil, even when he feeds a boy his own parents, even when he infects Kyle with HIV, even when he tries to exterminate an entire religion. The camera always pulls back just far enough to show you the empty house, the permissive mother, the missing father, the void where love should have been. It never excuses what he does, but it always explains it. And then there is the post-COVID ending. The ending that says Cartman can change, that given enough time, enough pain, enough distance from the people who enabled his worst instincts, he can build a real life. He can love a woman. He can raise children. He can find faith, real faith, not the kind he sold for profit when he was 9 years old. The show proved this by giving us 40 years of evidence. Yentl was not a scheme. The children were not props. The conversion was not a long con against Kyle. It was real. All of it. And then the show took it away. In a better timeline where the pandemic never broke everyone apart, Cartman never hit the bottom that forced him to climb. He never had the crisis that made him question everything. He just stayed who he was. Selfish, angry, alone, screaming at his former friends from across the street while they watched from a warm window. This is the philosophy of Eric Cartman, and it is not a comfortable one. It says that people can change, but only if they are broken first. It says that the worst version of yourself is also the most natural version, the one that shows up when nothing forces you to be better. It says that redemption is real, but it is also fragile, and it depends on circumstances that you cannot control. Cartman did not choose to become a better person in the original timeline. The world broke him into it, and when the world was fixed, the better version of him simply never existed. He went right back to being the kid who ate the skin off all the fried chicken and could not understand why everyone was angry about it. The show is not saying that broken worlds are better. It is not saying that suffering is necessary for growth, though it flirts with the idea. What it is saying is something simpler and sadder. It is saying that the thing standing between who you are and who you could be is often just the willingness to face the worst parts of yourself. And most people, most of the time, will not do that unless they have no other choice. Cartman had no other choice in the bad timeline. He lost everything, and from that loss, he built something beautiful. In the good timeline, he never lost anything except the people who might have challenged him. And without that challenge, he became nothing. That is what makes him the greatest character in the history of adult animation. Not because he is funny, though he is enormously funny. Not because he is evil, though he is capable of evil that would make most fictional villains look tame, but because he contains the full range of what a person can be. He is the cruelty and the loneliness. He is the genius and the stupidity. He is the con artist and the true believer. He is the kid who fed a boy his own parents and also the man who shot a friend to save Kyle's life. He is the boy who cried about not having a father and the man who became a father himself. He is the 9-year-old who could not name Jimmy's last name when asked, and also the adult who memorized the Torah well enough to lead a congregation. He is all of these things at once, and the show never pretends that any one of them cancels out the others. Eric Cartman is not a lesson. He is a question. And the question is the same one the show has been asking since 4 boys stood at a bus stop in a small mountain town in Colorado, and one of them opened his mouth and said something terrible. The question is, what are you going to do about the Cartman inside you? Are you going to let him win? And if you are being honest, really honest, can you be sure that he has not already? Anyway, that is Eric Cartman. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.